Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source, Comic Boom, DC Spotlight, going over all the books that come out, well, almost all the books that are coming out this week from DC on May 11th. Man, it's May 11th
Lots of books,
already.
lots of comics.
Where's this year gone? But yeah, Rocky's right. There's a lot of books this week, so I guess we should just dive right in. 10 books, so in the interest of full disclosure, American Vampire 1976 number 8 comes out today. I have never read American Vampire. I started reading American Vampire last week from like the very first issue, but you know, we're talking like 50 issues on top of all the other stuff, and it just didn't happen. I read like the first 5, and it's okay. It hasn't really hit for me yet, but so many people love it. It's Scott Snyder, Raphael Albuquerque. And so I do want to read it at some point, but I was hoping to get to it before we got to the end of the series so I could talk about it, how it all wraps up, and it just didn't happen. But it was pretty interesting to read the first issue or first couple issues, and in the back, there's a picture of Scott Snyder from, you know, nearly 20 years ago. He looks so young and baby-faced.
Yeah,
so we're not going to...
Yeah, a lot of history with American Vampire there. A lot of history, a lot of continuity established.
Yeah, so we're not going to talk about that. At least I'm not going to talk about that because I haven't read it. Yeah. But maybe at some future date, we'll do a deep dive into American Vampire. So of the other 9 books that came out, the first one we're going to start with is Future State Gotham. And I never saw anything about this book being in black and white. It's written by Joshua Williamson and Dennis Culver. The art is by Giannis Milogiannis, who we sort of... we really kind of raked him over the coals for his artwork in the Future State. You know, we talked about Red Hood looking like Doug from the Nickelodeon cartoons, and honestly, he really did. But here's his artwork is presented in black and white, and Rocky and I were talking about it yesterday. It works so much better as black and white art. But again, I just thought it was kind of strange that it wasn't. I never saw it mentioned anywhere that it was going to be in black and white. The letters are by Troy Petrie. There is a pinup from Mobius as well, which obviously Mobius has been dead for decades, so that's a sort of a reprinted thing. And speaking of reprints, there's a backup in here as well that apparently was first released in Batman Black and White number 4 back in 1996. It's by Katsuhiro Otomo, who is the legendary creator of Akira, the Akira comic and I guess I should say manga and anime. And I'm just not sure why it's here, to be honest. It almost feels like, well, we didn't give you color, but it's still a $3.99 book. So we're going to give you this Mobius pinup, and we're going to give you this other story that is critically acclaimed, although I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. We'll talk about that in a second. But like they threw some extra stuff in here just to make sure people were complaining it was only $3.99 because it was only in black and white. But I'm curious, Rocky, neither you nor I really cared for the Future State Gotham Red Hood story. So, you know, both of us were, when we heard about this Future State Gotham title, we were both kind of like, yeah, probably not going to check that out. But it's a preview copy. It doesn't cost us anything. So why not give it a try? So what did you think?
I wasn't really a fan of this. You know, I agree with you that the art, I like the art a little better in black and white, only because it's kind of sad. I liked it better in black and white for all the wrong reasons, because coloring actually makes the art look worse, and that's not a good thing. But I mean, it's tolerable, but I just don't like the storyline. I don't like this Future State. I wasn't a fan of the storyline to begin with. It's a future Gotham where the magistrate's in charge, and this is a continuation of the Future State storyline where Red Hood is he's working undercover, and he basically becomes Peacekeeper Red. He gets honorary status as a peacekeeper. He gets honorary status, and as a result of that, he just ends with him confirming him being undercover, working with the peacekeepers to essentially take down and hunt the Batman, which I don't find I don't find exciting at all. I don't see the point of this. I really don't. I don't get it. I don't. I'm really not a fan of this. Straight up, I'm not a fan of this. I don't I don't like it. I I don't have a lot of nice things to say about it, to be honest. Um, but like I said, I find it very boring. It just ends with Jason Todd meeting with Nightwing and the other members of the Bat family, and Future State essentially had him sleeping with Ravager, and now she's taken off, so she's not even in this series now. Which she was at least he was getting lucky with Ravager, but she's not even in the series now, or maybe she'll come back. I'm not really sure what the point of this is. So now in the future he's hunting Batman. Well, I thought the whole point of this was Future State was to tease the future, and then let's build up to it. I'm so thoroughly uninterested. This doesn't interest me in the slightest. And to be honest, I feel insulted by the art. And I know I'm contradicting myself because I said the art's a little better, but frankly, this feels tacked on. This feels like they never had enough time to color it, and that they're throwing it at us because they don't want to waste product. You know what I mean? It feels like you're in the restaurant and they don't want to make new food, but they have leftovers. So this is the leftovers we get, and they want to fill up space, and they want to meet a publishing quantity, and that's what it feels like to me, both in terms of how it looks and in terms of story. And frankly, shame on DC for putting this out. Straight up, I'll just leave it at that, and I'll stop talking because my mom always said, if you have nothing nice to say, maybe say as little as possible. So there you go. I'm done.
Yeah. I sort of agree with you, certainly about the art. It's one thing to put out a book in black and white, right? That's one thing. This doesn't look like art that was meant to be seen in black and white, right? It's not. This looks like pencils. It doesn't look inked. It looks very. I mean, you want to talk about sketchy. On the title page, the missiles that are flying through the air, they're not. It's sketched. These are sketch lines. It's not like, okay, go over and ink and then get rid of the pencil lines. And if you look at the art, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It is really unfinished. And while yes, it looks better than his finished color work, because I think he did his own finishes and colors in the Future State books, if I'm not mistaken. He needs a proper inker to go over to this and to make his art better. And then I think his art could actually be pretty good, but that's not what this looks like. And so, like, to the point where when I saw this, I got the preview copy and I saw it. It's not unheard of to get preview copies that aren't colored, right? To where they had to send it out. The color says behind, they had to make changes, whatever. For whatever reason, you get preview copies that aren't colored, even though the final product is colored. So when I saw this, because the art looks so unfinished, I actually did a Google search and I went and looked for Gotham Future State preview to see preview pages in other places to see if this indeed is supposed to be colored. And maybe it is. Maybe all the preview pages that we're seeing are this, and it wasn't colored yet. And tomorrow, when the book actually comes out, or today as you're listening to this, it'll actually, the art will look better. It'll look finished, because this doesn't look good. It's one thing to be in black and white. It's another thing to look completely unfinished like this does. As far as the story itself, I feel like the only thing that happened is we got 100% confirmation that Red Hood was indeed working undercover, and he's not the bad guy jerk that he seemed to be in this couple parts of the story that we got before. He's trying to destroy the magistrate from the inside out. But to Rocky's point, like, I thought we were supposed to be introduced to the future and then build up to it and then have it not come to pass. So what's the point of this? Was Future State Gotham, was Future State Batman, or Future State Dark Detective selling so well that it warrants this? Because this is a way to put the sales on the toilet pretty quick in terms of the quality of this book. It's just not very good. And I won't necessarily say that's from a technical standpoint, because I think technically, in terms of these being pencils, if I look at this just as pencil art, it's pretty good pencil art. If I look at this as finished art, it's not. If I think about this in terms of the pacing and the scripting, the dialogue, the actual words used, it's solid. But the problem is the plot. The problem is the story. To Rocky's point, who the hell's asking for this? Who wanted more of stories set in that crappy future state timeline? Nobody. So yeah, I kind of feel like, what's the point? It definitely feels tacked on and like a money grab and what have you. So I mean, I might be interested enough to read the second issue if I'm reading it as a preview copy, but I would not recommend anybody spend a single penny on this book because it's just not worth your money or your time. And that backup story, while it has some interesting concepts, it doesn't feel finished. The art is pretty spectacular, and it definitely suits black and white, which is another reason that makes me think this whole book was intended to be black and white. Like I mentioned earlier, this story from the Akira creator showed up in black and white, Batman Black and White #4 from 1996. So if this whole book was meant to be in black and white, why not throw a backup in that was black and white? But the story just ends with Batman choosing to not be Batman anymore, but yet he's still wearing the Batman costume. It just doesn't have the Batman symbol on it. Because the villain he's facing all along is talking about how there's no reason to limit the number of masks that you wear. So Batman takes that to be, I don't have to be Batman. I don't have to be Bruce Wayne. I can be something else. Let me take the bat symbol off my chest, but I'm still wearing the same costume. And then when he confronts the villain at the end, the villain says, "Oh, there you are, Batman." And he responds, "I'm not Batman," as opposed to the classic line of, "I'm Batman." But I feel like, what's the point? So what's the point? What are you trying to say? That Bruce Wayne doesn't have to be Batman? Why? I don't get it.
Yeah.
The art is spectacular in it. That's what I'll say. But it's certainly not. Don't go spending $4 just to see this art from a reprinted story from 1996. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's this whole issue is it's just not worth it. It was a disappointment across the board, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yep, agreed. So, well, let's move on. The next book we're going to talk about is Justice League Last Ride #1. And this is from writer Chip Zdarsky. We have art by Miguel Mondoka. Colors are by Enrica Angiolini. Letters by World Design. And this is sort of like supposed to be the last Justice League story, I guess. There's the main cover is by Derek Robertson, which is okay. But the variant cover by Miguel Mondoka is really, really spectacular. I think it's the better of the two. But anyway, it's Chip Zdarsky on Justice League. So I have high expectations. I don't know how you feel about it, Rocky, but what do you think when you read it?
I thought it was good. I mean, it didn't blow me away or nothing, but I like one thing I like about Chip Zdarsky is he's not afraid to dive into his own particular interpretation of the characters. It's clear to me that Zdarsky he does just like when he in the Red Hood story in Batman Urban Legends, Zdarsky has a specific character interpretation of these characters, and he establishes what that is. And he does it very well in this opening issue, just as he did with Red Hood and Batman Urban Legends, and continues to do so there. This is a Superman and Batman that aren't getting along. If this is Justice League Last Ride, and if this is the Justice League story, it's established in story as to why this might indeed be the last Justice League story, because in fact this involves a scenario where something happened in the future where Batman made a decision that got Martian Manhunter killed, and Superman hasn't really gotten over that and blames Batman for making the decision that got Martian Manhunter killed, and Batman's angry at Superman for never making a decision, which makes sense. Batman's always the one who has to make the decision because Superman's always often a little bit more indecisive. Batman is the guy who gives the orders and everyone else follows them. Superman resents that, but I think deep down Superman knows that in many ways, I think Superman he's not as good as Batman is making that call, but Batman's like the general in many ways, and he makes the call and the League follows, and there's some resentment there between Batman and Superman, and that and that's carried forward in the narrative. And Wonder Woman's frustrated with both of them. Flash is just somebody who likes to eat a lot of food. I think it's Barry Allen Flash, although maybe it's Wally West. But I'm not really sure which Flash it is. I can't remember if he was called Wally or Barry in the narrative. But when Hal Jordan shows up, they have to protect Lobo. Lobo, it was responsible for apparently killing all the new gods, and he's going to be put on trial by the United Planets. Hal Jordan, who's one of the few remaining Green Lanterns, he wants to establish New Oa on the moon, on Earth's moon. And if they do that, then they can retire the Justice League and have the Justice League and have the Green Lantern Corps not only have a headquarters for New Oa, but also be essentially the de facto Justice League for Earth. And that's really where, so this entire issue essentially sets that up. And I think it sets it up fairly well. I think it does a really good job. Sorry about that. I'm jumping ahead, but I have to say, I was really pleased with this. I'm interested to see where this is headed next. And the character work was great. The art by Mendonca, I don't think I'm familiar with his art, but it works for me. Overall, I have to say, I thought it was well done.
Miguel's art is spectacular here. Most people may like his previous longest gig, I guess you would say. I mean, he's done some fill-in stuff here and there. He did some of the issues that Brian Edward Hill wrote of Detective Comics. Miguel did the art for that. That's where I first became familiar with his art. And then he did a lot of work on Kelly Sue DeConnick's Aquaman. And I have probably what is my favorite commission of all time is a commission from Miguel Mendonca, which is absolutely amazing. I'll show it to you in a second. But first, my kind of thoughts on the issue itself. I agree with Rocky. This didn't blow me away, but there's a lot to like here. There are certain things I love. I love the characterization of Superman and Lois. Their relationship is portrayed very, very well. I think a lot of the characters, their characterization, you can't necessarily say, okay, Zardasky's doing a great job of characterization on that character, because so much has changed here. This is a story in the future. This could potentially be the last Justice League story. So the way the characters interact, everything has been changed. The dynamic has changed because of the events that happened that caused Martian Manhunter to be killed. But it is great to see Superman calling Batman out. Oh, you always call the shots? Well, not this time. And Batman calling out Superman saying, no, you're not assertive enough. Like you can see where each of the characters is coming from. One of the things, probably the thing I like least about the story, is at times it feels less like a Justice League story and more just like a Batman story. And God knows we have more than enough Batman stories in the DC universe. But Batman's characterization here is so strong and so over the top. And as the story and plot play out, even the rest of the Justice League acknowledges, hey, we need to keep Lobo safe. We can't do that without Batman. So all of a sudden, Batman is the central figure, is the central, part of the story where we can't do this without Batman. He becomes the most important character, which again leads it to feel much like a Batman story.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of Batman stories, to be honest with you. The idea of a Zardasky Justice League story excites me. I'd love to get Chip Zdarsky's take on the Justice League. I'm less interested in his take on Batman. So it's the jury's still out on this for me of where it's going to go and ultimately how I'll feel about it in the end. But it is a good start. Yeah. And the color work and the artwork by Mendonca, and or the line work, I should say, by Mendonca, and the color work by Enrica Angiolini, who I've heard the name, but I don't know that I've ever looked at their work and gone, wow, they're really talented. But yeah, this is really spectacular, and far and away my favorite part of the book is Lois and Superman in the Fortress of Solitude. So it's a good start. I hope it's less Batman centric as it goes along, and curious to see what happens.
I was going to comment. the fact that you're a little annoyed at maybe it's too Batman centric is ironically enough that might be what Zardasky was going after, because in fact Superman is annoyed with Batman too, because it's always about Batman. Batman always sort of takes the lead, always makes the decisions, and I think that's one of the things that inherently is Superman finds extremely annoying, and it's one of the things that's causing them both a great deal of tension. But
So what you're saying is I'm just like Superman? I'll take that.
yeah, that's exactly right. So who can blame you?
Yeah, so here's my one of my favorite commissions of all time. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, nice.
So that is Superman, and he's brushing Lex Luthor's teeth.
Now, just a minute. I'll try to squeeze you up here on the bigger. I'll do a bigger.
So this all stems from a conversation with Tom King about Tom King was wondering if Superman brushed his teeth, and somebody said Superman brushes everyone's teeth. And then somebody else responded, "Oh, that's why Lex Luthor hates him." And so I decided to start a sketchbook of Superman brushing other people's teeth. Miguel was the first commission I got in it. And this is actually, if you can see sort of on the left there, you can actually see Superman and Lex's shoulder. What you actually see is their reflection in the mirror. And the looks on both of their faces are just absolutely spectacular.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, Miguel, he's amazing. Really, really great guy. So I look forward. He lives over in Spain, I believe. So I look forward to the next time he's at a convention here in the U.S. and I can actually hang out with him again. So great guy. Great to see him getting work. He's super talented. And Superman's one of his favorite characters. And it was always he was a DC guy. It was always his dream to draw comics and specifically draw for DC. So him getting to do a Justice League book is awesome. I'm super happy for him. So
good to see.
Yeah. So let's move on. We're going to talk about Batman. Speaking of Batman the Detective #2 from writer Tom Taylor, Andy Kubert on pencils, Sandra Hope on inks, colors by Brad Anderson. Second part of this, I believe, 6-part story. And I thought this one, it didn't. There wasn't as much to this issue as there was the first, which I suppose is understandable. First issue, you're establishing, what's going on. We know that there's some organization that is trying to basically kill people that Batman has saved. I don't know if they call themselves Equilibrium or that's like their battle cry or something, but for some reason they believe that the people that Batman saved should have died, and they're trying to bring balance back to the world by killing the people that shouldn't be alive, basically. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Don't think about it too hard. Like, why would they be? We get a closer look at them. They dress like Batman, but their suits are like white or gray. So that's interesting. We have Knight and Squire, who are a couple of superheroes from the kind of Batman analogs of the UK. So that's interesting. And then we have Henri Ducard, who's one of the most influential characters or people in the training of Bruce Wayne. Think of him as, one of the greatest bounty hunters, I guess, or man hunters that's ever lived. And he taught Batman everything he knows. And the dynamics between him and Bruce are great. And he gets ambushed by this group, this Equilibrium, and whether or not he survives is to be determined. I mean, you kind of think he's going to survive. He is pretty important in the Batman mythos, but at the same time, I wouldn't be completely shocked to see him killed. But I do think he'll survive. But it does make for kind of a powerful moment because you're like, wow, this guy's an important character in Batman lore, and he gets jacked up pretty bad when he's attacked by this Equilibrium group. So other than that, there's not that much that happens. I think the art in this issue is substantially better than the first issue. I didn't get any JR vibes from the Andy Kubert art, or at least very minimally. So I thought overall the art was pretty strong. the scripting by Tom Taylor and the pacing are done pretty well. If there's anything wrong with the story or any nitpick, to this point, it doesn't feel impactful or necessary. I don't know why this story needs to exist yet. It hasn't. Tom Taylor hasn't hooked me, even though the possibility is there. But usually with Tom Taylor stuff, I'm hooked right away. That's not the case with this. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised that the art was so much better in the second issue. I particularly love the page where they're running across the top of the train in the rain with the lightning behind them. I thought that was done really, really well. So yeah, overall, I've kind of liked this issue, even though it's less volume of story. I felt like there was a bigger chunk of story in the first issue. I feel like this was done better. The first issue felt a little choppy, but this, both the pacing narratively and visually, I thought was done better. And I thought this was overall a better issue technically, but I'm still not completely pulled into the story yet. So what did you think, Rocky?
I love Henri Descartes. I love when any story that incorporates any mentor of Bruce Wayne, like when in those infamous years when Bruce Wayne was training to become Batman and travel the world. Of course, Henri Descartes was one of the ones who helped train him, and Henri Descartes could essentially find anybody. And I found it interesting that Henri Descartes actually looks, he's supposed to look older than Bruce Wayne, but he actually looks like almost look like they're the same age, which I found was really odd here. I thought that was an error artistically, because Henri Descartes should look older than he looks, because he should look a little bit more ragged. I mean, he's aged much better than Bruce Wayne has. Let's put it that way, if that's to be believed. But in any event, he should be older than Bruce Wayne. But having said that, Henri Descartes here is obviously there's a history there. Batman has sort of mixed feelings about Henri Descartes, doesn't always appreciate his methods, but it's clear that they have a history. And I love that. I love the character work it does that Tom Taylor does here. That Henri Descartes, Henri Descartes appears to respect Bruce Wayne, respect Batman more than Batman respects him. And Henri Descartes seems to be a little bit more of a realist. Batman seems a little bit more sort of stubborn and still very judgmental of Descartes, which I suppose is not surprising. He is Batman, and he has a hard time letting mistakes go in the past. I found it interesting that Henri Descartes made a reference to the woman in the Batman outfit, who is. It's odd that that this Equilibrium group, they're dressed like Batman, and they're saying is you should not exist. So if you've been saved by Batman, you should not exist, and they're going to kill you. I thought it was quite a comical scene that was set up where when Batman actually saves one of the members of Equilibrium, that he saves their life, and then he puts a tracer on the guy, and he ends up back in the clutches of Equilibrium. And of course, this guy actually works for Equilibrium, but then when they discover that Batman saved him, suddenly he's on the list that has to be eliminated because Batman saved him. So I thought that was hilarious. It's like, oh no! And you could tell the look on his face that, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. Batman didn't save me, no. But anyways, that was funny. Descartes references when this woman, this female, and we're assuming she's female because she's got breasts and she's referenced as a she, that Henri Descartes says, a woman does appear to be behind it all, and Henri Descartes says to this woman right before he supposedly kills her that he says, "You were always a bit unstable. I know what happened. What you're doing won't help." And so whoever this woman is, it's a woman from Batman's past. And in my view, there's only a limited number of women. Is Tom Taylor going to introduce a brand new character who's behind the mask as heading Equilibrium? Or is he going to delve into Batman lore? Is this Talia al Ghul behind the mask? Is this, it wouldn't be Selina. Could it be a Stephanie Brown, Bluebird, Gotham Girl, Phantasm? My guess was Phantasm, but Tom King's doing that. And there's a number of, it could be Nisa al Ghul. Who is this female running the head of Equilibrium? I suspect maybe Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor is well-versed in DC lore, so it wouldn't surprise me if he used an existing female character from Batman lore, or maybe from another mythology of another hero in the DC universe. But I really like where this is going. And, you know, a nice little mystery is developing as to who this female leader of Equilibrium would be, and why do they care so much about killing off all the people who Batman has saved. I'm still in this. I quite enjoyed this issue.
Yeah, I mean, they must want Henri dead even more now, because once they shoot him and throw him off the side of the building, he for sure would have died, but Batman grabs him right before he hits the ground. So now Batman has saved him again. So now they must really. The other thing that one last thought is when all these groups, all these members of Equilibrium attack him, most of them look human, but some of them not so much. Like there's particularly one that looks like he's some kind of gargoyle-looking guy with like fangs, and the skin color on some of the others looks interesting. So, yeah, it's going to be really curious to find out more about that Equilibrium group and who might be behind the cowls, as it were. So, all right, up next we have Superman number 31. This is written by Phillip Kennedy Johnson. We have Scott Godlewski on the breakdowns. Scott does the art on pages 1 and 2, and then 13 through 22. Norm Ratman handles the art on pages 3 through 12. Gabe Eltab on colors, and Dave Sharp on letters. Yeah, what to say about this? You know what? I'm going to let you go first, Rocky. Curious what you thought.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find my notes here. Let me see. Well, I guess I'll have to wing it here. I didn't find that. I don't think I know that I didn't take a lot of notes on this because I thought it was relatively straightforward. I was actually, this is better than the first issue. I like the fact, because this is really, this whole issue is about, you know, this is a callback to an earlier adventure that Superman had, not in continuity, but where Superman was dealing with this alien race where he put down some sort of alien, I don't know, mind controller that was taking over the planet, and it's come back to life now. And Superman is defeated in this issue, and he's got to rely on John Kent. He's got to rely upon his son. And, you know, John Kent has been through a lot. Like he's gone through I think a very tumultuous phase, both from the fans who don't like the fact that he's aged up. I think he was written terribly in Future State. He came across like a jerk in Future State. I feel that this is the second issue in a row where the writer is trying to put lipstick on the pig that Phillip Kennedy Johnson is trying to put lipstick on the pig that is John Kent, trying to maybe redeem him, I feel, in the eyes of the readership, and also maybe just give him a little bit of redemption himself. In fact, John Kent even impresses his father in this issue because he does a thing with his heat vision that Superman's never done before, and I think is a first. I don't think Superman was impressed that his son actually used his heat vision to explode water molecules at the molecular level to cause a heat flash as opposed to heat vision. And he was impressed with that. He thought it was very creative of John Kent, his son, and he was happy that he did that. And but then ultimately he's defeated, and it's clear that John Kent is going to be the one that's going to save the day here from the, I can't even remember the name of the villain here. It's the whole point of this
Shadow Breed.
What, the Shadow Breed?
Shadow Breed.
Yeah. Fair enough. I'm not, like I said, I think this is very, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just, frankly, I have a bias. I just don't want to, I guess I just want a more epic adventure. This just feels, you know, this story just isn't really for me. Although I want to give props to Phillip Kennedy Johnson where I think he deserves it. He did do some character work here, and I think he's doing his best to try to prop up John Kent, and he does a good job in this issue. I like John Kent in this issue. I thought it felt like he's a teenager. It felt that he's learning. It feels like this is a kid that's learning and he's getting better, and he's better than his self-esteem would suggest. He's very hard on himself. He's kind of insecure, but yet despite his insecurity, he's better than he thinks he is. And and Kal-El, his father, wants him to embrace and to be more secure in his decision making because he is good. John Kent knows what he's doing, but he lacks the self-esteem at times in order to fully embrace the legacy that he's one day going to have, being the son of Superman.
Yeah, there is some good character work, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first, I'll call out the art. A lot of people like Scott Godlewski's art, and I think his art is fine. It works at times. I didn't think it was that great. A lot of people praised it on the Future State House of L book. I just thought it was okay. I actually like the Norm Ratman art better here. I think the color work suits Norm's lines. I just think his rendering and his line work is just a little cleaner. Not to say the Godlewski art is bad by any stretch, but I did enjoy Norm's pages better. As far as the story itself, yeah, I agree with Rocky. It's nothing special. It doesn't have that majestic Superman, space opera, superhero type of story feel that I think Kennedy Johnson's going for. But it's not all bad. He's definitely playing with John Kent and playing with this idea of fathers and sons. This alien world that they're on, the dynamic between fathers and their offspring is very different. It's one of fear rather than love. Like if you fear your father, and show him respect, that's kind of the most important thing, as opposed to kind of our human outlook on it, where if there's love and respect between a father and a child, and that's what's most important. So there's a lot of juxtaposition there between the relationship these aliens have with their parents versus the relationship that John has with his father. But the best character work is actually when John is talking to one of these aliens, and he's kind of, this alien is sort of our point of view character for this, what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is trying to get across. Like what's John afraid of, right? He's afraid of being less than what his father is. And when you think about that, it makes a lot of sense. He talks about how on Earth, his dad is called Superman, right? He's the ass alien. You know what that means, right? Like that's a lot to live up to. And this line, I think, is the most important line that I've seen Kennedy Johnson write in a Superman book. And it's so important, and it's one I think DC editorial needs to take to heart. John basically says that he feels like his father has been trying to teach him how to be Superman, right? So that once Clark, Kal-El, whatever you want to call him, once he's not around anymore, John can take up the mantle. But John says, this is very important, Superman's not a title. It's him. And there will only ever be one of him. Full stop, period. That's it. And it feels like, although Kennedy Johnson is putting this right on the page, plain as day, the DC editorial is not getting this. This is the problem with aging John up. This is the problem with giving John the Superman title, ending the current Superman title, starting it up, calling it Superman, son of Kal-El. John Kent should never be Superman. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a hero. John Kent should have his own superhero name. It shouldn't be Superman. There is only one Superman. There will only ever be one Superman. Now, whether you decide that you're going to have him live forever and be immortal and outlive Lois and Jimmy and all the other guys, outlive perhaps John himself, since John's half human, it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. Even if Superman dies tomorrow, there should never be another Superman. There is only one Superman. I've never agreed with something a writer has written more vehemently than with what John, and I love the awareness that John is putting out here, and I get it. Like we have a Superboy, we have a Supergirl, we have, multiple Superboys actually. We've had, different names, and John certainly is wearing the crest of the House of L, but you got to find a way to establish his own identity that's separate from his father. And maybe we're getting a hint of that. Rocky talked about how John uses his heat vision in a different way than his father ever has here. So let's differentiate his powers a little bit. Let's get him a different costume if we need to. Let's stop trying to shoehorn John into the shoes of his father and just let him be his own character. So if we can get there, like if Philip Kennedy Johnson ends up staying on Action Comics for a while and we get that, maybe that's what Tom Taylor's book is going to be. John gets out of the shadow of his father and stops trying to be Superman and picks up chooses another superhero name. Man, I would be all for that. I would be all for that. I think that's the direction he needs to go. The problem I think a lot of people have with the aging up is it's that much closer to trying to, shove John into the role that his father has. We already have a Superman. He's a great character. There's plenty of stories you can keep telling with that character. Why replace him and then try to tell the same types of stories with a new character? It's arbitrary. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. So that's all I have to say about this issue. That's the important part of it. The rest of it, to me, it's just, kind of typical and tropey and not really that interesting. It certainly seems like Kennedy Johnson is trying to show us how capable and formidable John is on his own. Perhaps he's going to rescue his father. The backup story, first of all, I'll say the art by Sammy Basri is spectacular. It's written by Sean Lewis. It's basically a loose cannon and current gangbuster story that's tied into this Tales of Metropolis that's been going on with this woman who's putting the hex on people and making them see things that aren't there or act in ways they shouldn't. The art's the best part of it. The story itself, it's not memorable enough that it's easy to follow. Like, I read it and I kind of got the gist of it, but I felt like if I want to get the most out of the story, I'd have to go back and read all the backups again, because they're not big enough chunks of story and it's not important or impactful enough to remember. I'm like trying to remember back. So yeah, they had a meeting of this Metropolis group with Ambush Bug and John Henry Irons and Bibbo and Loose Cannon and Gangbuster. And then previous to that, Bibbo had met some woman who we know is a villain, but he doesn't. And she's kind of pulling the wool over his eyes. And what's the point of this? I mean, it does feel a little bit of the Triangle era in terms of the Triangle era of Superman stories having a big supporting cast, almost an ensemble. And so I do like the nostalgia of that. But again, I just don't feel these backups are necessary. If this is a story you want to tell, then just give us an 80-page one-shot or a 2-issue mini so we can read it all together and remember what the hell's going on instead of giving us, like a third of a story as a backup, and it drags the story out and makes it hard to remember over a 6-month period of time. So anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add about the backup, Rocky.
I really don't. I just sort of skim read it. I'm just not interested in it. I'm just really not interested in it. If you want to get me interested in Bibbo and the Ilk and Loose Cannon, incorporate it in a Superman story that will pull me in and have me invest in it more. These are C-level characters that I've never really cared for.
At best.
Yeah.
At best, C-level.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm just really not I'm just not into it. I mean, like I said, it needs to be connected more to the Superman with Superman. I'm not interested in these characters. I got no reason to care for them. And in fairness, I've never cared for them in 40 years. So I'm not going to start now, if to be very brutally honest. And if you're going to do it, you're going to have to do something truly completely outside the box. And this is just sort of typical. Like you said, you nailed it with the Triangle era. That's what it feels like to me. This is like the total filler, waste of space. This adds to the price of a comic book that this shouldn't even be in this comic. Straight up, shouldn't be in this comic, in my view. And it's very harsh of me to say, but that's just the way it is.
Yep, I agree. All right, up next we have Rorschach number 8 from writer Tom King, Jorge Fornes on the art. Dave Stewart does the colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. This was a very interesting issue. We got, I wouldn't say a lot of forward momentum on the story, but a lot of character work, especially for the detective that's investigating this assassination attempt. So what'd you think of this one, Rock?
I thought it was good. I had to read it a couple times again, but in order to get a better appreciation of it, this involves the lieutenant that's investigating the assassination of the attempted assassination of candidate Turley, who was running against the incumbent President Robert Redford. And last issue we were introduced to Frank Miller, and Frank Miller is what's established this issue is that he actually the entire issue involves a series of interrogation scenes and flashbacks, and he's investigating and interrogating. The lieutenant is interrogating a lawyer by the name of Samuel Faden, a psychiatrist by the name of Jamie Knowles, and just a sort of a friend of Will Myerson, one of the would-be assassinators, named Daniel Shapiro, and they're all given testimony, and clearly the lieutenant, through his questioning, is very frustrated with all of them because they're all lying in different ways, and they're providing misdirection, and as a reader, I'm just as frustrated as the lieutenant here. And I think Tom King did a good job here. Whereas normally I would be inclined to blame Tom King for the lack of clarity. I think it works well here because I think the lieutenant himself, who's doing the investigating, he's frustrated with the lack of clarity because he figures that all these members, this lawyer who used to be the lawyer for Will Myerson, and this lawyer was a comic collector who met Will Myerson, who's a comic book creator of this pirate comic. He met him at a comic convention, and then the psychiatrist is the son of a psychiatrist that gave Will Myerson, counseling sessions. And then you got this Daniel Shapiro, who's a good friend, whose uncle who really liked Will Myerson's comic book work. So everything's connected, and the lieutenant sort of seems to think that they're all member of this cult, and that Will Myerson and this Laura Cummings, they worked together, and they really did it would appear that they really did manage to create what appears at this point to be a strong cult following. That maybe we're not sure how large this cult goes, but if there is a small number of members in it, they've drank the Kool-Aid. They've definitely drank the Kool-Aid of whatever it is that Frank Miller was selling or Will Myerson was selling. And again, it's sort of continues to create. There's a lot of questions I have, but it's clear that it's not just this Frank Miller, that character that is sort of brainwashed into wanting to be Rorschach, but that there's more than one member to this. And I'm still not entirely clear what their agenda is. If it was just straight up to kill Turley, because they heard it on a tape recording like that was established last issue. So there's a lot of interesting little tidbits here. As I said last time when we reviewed this, Jace, if somebody who's just coming into this series cold is going to have a hard time figuring out what the heck is going on. If you want to read this series from the beginning, if you do, I believe you'll be rewarded. I think that Tom King has done some really good character work here. And it's all going to come down to the landing, how this ends. I've been highly critical. I think Tom King can really blunder his endings, but at the same time, he's nailed some endings too with some of his work. So I'm on board here. I'm enjoying the journey so far. I'm just hoping the destination is going to be good when we finally get there.
Yeah, I agree. There's no way you can pick this up, issue 8 and jump in and know what the hell's going on. And part of it has to do with the way that Tom wrote this. He's talked in multiple interviews. He told me himself when he was on the show that, he wrote this as one big story. He wrote it as basically one novel, if you want to think about it like that. This is one story that is then broken up into 8 parts. So it's going to read great altogether. The nature of comics and releasing it monthly, it takes time to draw, that kind of thing. I totally get it. But it's going to be another one of those situations, much like Mr. Miracle or Strange Adventures. Sheriff of Babylon's another one where reading it all together is going to be a much more satisfying experience, I think. As far as this issue itself, what we learned about the detective and his insight, the steps he's willing to take are all fascinating. The artwork by Jorge Fornes is equally fascinating. And it really stops and makes you think once you hear about the story. These 3 guys, the handyman, the lawyer, and the psychiatrist, they go out to this ranch that Myerson has bought, and Cummings is there as well, and they each have their own task to perform there, and they all basically shoot this gun at a stage that's been erected out on the land from this tower. It's basically it's Cummings and Meyerson practicing the assassination attempt, basically. But these guys don't know that. And the detective's response to that is, how could you not know? Like, what about what was going on makes this seem normal? And it's so interesting the way the detective's mind works. He knows that they're all collaborating. He knows that they're all conspiring, and they're telling him lies, basically, because nobody's story would match as closely as these guys' stories match. There would be more differences. When he finally calls them on it, they sort of fess up, oh, this is the guy that really is onto something. He's the one we can pass along the message to. And what's that message? The squids are here, right? Like, that's been behind the story all along, about this whole idea of the squids that came at the end of Watchmen are controlling people's minds. And it seems so far-fetched and just completely out there, because we, of course, know how it wasn't even a real alien invasion based on what Ozymandias did and Adrian Vett and all that kind of stuff. So there's much more to come here. There's 4 issues left. I'm fascinated. It's really interesting. It's an interesting look, and with the artwork that Fornes is bringing us, which is kind of crime noir, and sort of he brings a realism and a cynicism to the art that works really well. The idea of Meyerson being a comic creator and bringing in creators from the past like Otto Binder, Frank Miller showing up again, like, why is King doing that? I think we're not going to have the answers to a lot of these questions until we get to the end. And knowing Tom King, we won't even get all the answers, at least not on the record. I'm sure next time I see Tom, we'll be asking him some questions about this, and we'll see what happens and what we're actually able to say. But yeah, this is a really interesting story. It's a lot of fun. And despite it all being written as one kind of continuous narrative, he is switching things up from chapter to chapter, because this issue starts off and you're like, I was remembering back to the way this last issue ended, and I'm like, it took me a second. I'm like, wait, what's going on again? So it took me a minute. But yeah, this is probably the best thing Tom King's done in quite a while. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth a read for people who if dare I say, if you liked Watchmen, I think this would be definitely worth checking out for people, no question.
Yep, agreed. All right, up next is Joker number 3. This is from writer James Tynion. We have Guillem March on the art, Arif Prianto doing the colors, and Tom Napolitano on letters. This is a dense read. The issue is sort of narrated by Jim Gordon, and all along we've said this isn't a Joker story, this or Joker title. This should be called Gordon, or Gordon's Manhunt, or Gordon Hunts for the Joker, something along those lines. Of course, it's not going to be, because if you call it Joker, you can get better sales, and so I completely get it. But in this issue, we get a lot of insight into what Gordon's thinking, and there's sort of a surprise ending where Gordon himself is sort of on the tail of the Joker, or meets up with the Joker much sooner than he might have expected. I think the artwork by Guillem March is done really well. His style has definitely changed over the years. I've talked about it previously. Go back and look at his artwork on the Catwoman on New 52, and his art is much cleaner. This is a little more gritty and a little more visceral, and I think it works that way. The one thing I don't like is how, and I don't know if this is Arif Prianto, the colorist, or if it's specifically something that Guillem March is doing, but in various panels, based on the angle supposedly of the glasses that Jim Gordon is wearing, you'll be able to see through one of the lenses, and the other lens will be like completely reflective, or sometimes both will be reflective. And I'm fine with both of the lenses being reflective and not being able to see his eyes, or being able to see both eyes. What I don't like is when you can see one eye and the other lens is reflective and you can't see the other eye. It just looks like he's missing a lens out of his glasses. I know that might not be like reality, and I know by looking at an angle, if I were with somebody wearing glasses like that in real life, it very well might be that I could only see one of his eyes and the other one would be reflective. But I don't care about the realism. It just looks bad when you can see one eye and you can't see the other, because it's completely colored over because it's supposedly being reflective. It just bugs me every time I see it. So I got to call it out. But overall, this is a fun story. Based on the way this ends, I have a feeling we're going to get more Joker going forward. So whether or not it can continue to be a book that I look forward to, I guess remains to be seen, because it certainly seems like we're going to get a bunch of over-the-top Jokerness coming up soon. But I love how much this showcases how Gordon is so much more than just, the guy that turns on the bat signal and sort of feeds Batman information. He is capable, very capable on his own. He's a superior detective. He's, has a ton of experience in law enforcement and manhunts and things like that. And it's great to see him sort of getting his due. I really do wish this was titled something that was reflective of that, giving Gordon some of his due. I mean, I think the last time, and I could be wrong, but I think the last time there was a Gordon titled book was way back in the 90s. There was a miniseries with 3 or 4 issues called Gordon's Law. That's the last time I remember there being a Gordon book. Obviously, we had, Gotham City Central and GCPD, and obviously those were Gordon-centric in as much as he was part of the police department, but not as much as Gordon's Law was, and certainly not as much as this is. So it's pretty solid. The backup story, less so. But I'll give Rocky a chance to talk about the main story, and then we'll talk a little bit about the backup.
Well, I love the story. As former Commissioner Gordon is flying off to Belize after being given a credit card with $25 million, pretty much unlimited spending money on it. And of course, Cressida, they completely trust him. He makes some comment about, "Are you sure you trust me with this?" And of course they do, because he's commissioner. He's Gordon, so everybody trusts him, even the bad guys. And as Vengeance, daughter of Bane, is on a ship to Belize, Gordon flies there, and as you mentioned, Gordon's detective work here really shines through. We're privy to his thoughts, thanks to James Tynion, who does a great job making us privy to Gordon's thoughts here. And he knows that when the rich want to hide from the rich, it's very different, because the rich find it easy to hide from the majority of us common folk, the troglodyte masses. But when the rich hide from the rich, it's another level entirely, and that's what they do in Belize. And Gordon is very surprised to discover that he tracks down the Joker, but he actually thinks that he's going to be, because it's the Joker, he's going to be 2 or 3 weeks behind the Joker, and he'll get to the Joker. He'll always be 4 steps behind the Joker, but he discovers that he actually runs into the Joker, and the Joker doesn't seem surprised to see him when they meet up in that same resort on Belize. That Joker was preparing to be Joker believes and knows he's going to be attacked, and Gordon is there with him, and Joker says something very specifically that we suspected, but we didn't know for certain, and that is the Joker at least says that he had nothing to do with the gas attack at Arkham Asylum. And now the Joker, of course, could be lying, and he could be lying to us readers, and he could be lying to Gordon, of course, but that makes a lot of sense. It even in Future State, when that A day, Arkham Asylum Day, where the gas attack at Arkham, we all suspected from the beginning, even in Future State when it happened, that it didn't feel right for something. It's something Joker would do, but it's a little bit too obvious. And so none of us really bought it, and neither, of course, obviously that's exactly what the Joker reveals here. And really, when the Joker greets Gordon, they're about to be attacked. I mean, all the rich people. Remember that cannibalistic crime family that whose one of their sons, one of their family members was killed in Arkham on the gas attack. They're blaming Joker for it. They're about to attack this Belize resort where the Joker is hiding out with Gordon, and so it looks like Gordon and Joker are going to have to team up. So it's going to be interesting to see how Commissioner Gordon navigates being a potential. He might have to fight alongside the Joker in order to save his own life before he contemplates eliminating the Joker's life to collect 25 cool million. But overall, I like the stakes that are building here. I think James Tynion and the Force doing a great job. We got a full page spread of Vengeance, daughter of Bane, but we still haven't seen her in action yet. So again, we're just in issue 3, and again, I'm just really excited for this issue. I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great title, despite the fact it's called Joker. I when it was announced, I railed again. Oh God, a Joker title, but it hasn't been. It's been a Gordon title, at least to this point. So we'll see if that continues. The backup is called Punchline Chapter 3, written by Sam Johns and James Tynion. We have art by Mirko Andolfo, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Ariana Mayer. Very, very predictable. This supposed friend of Punchline takes Bluebird to see all her stuff in the basement of her condemned dormitory where she killed her dean and first met the Joker. And sure enough, he has led Bluebird into a trap and paralyzes her with some gas from a book that Punchline had booby-trapped, and then lights all the stuff on fire and leaves. Yeah, not a fan of Punchline. I've talked about this whole idea of her on trial and the fact that she could get away with this as just being completely ludicrous and asinine and honestly depressing based on what we've seen in the real world, that this could actually happen with all the alternative facts and BS whatnot. Not a fan of the Punchline character, so I certainly could have done without this story. I didn't think the art. Frankly, I expect much better from Mirko Andolfo art. This is some of the worst art I've seen her do. So I don't know if she was rushed or what, but as far as the storytelling goes, narratively, the storytelling's fine. I just expect her art to be a lot more dynamic, and this was pretty meh, to be honest with you. So I don't have much more to say than that.
Yeah, I don't. I agree with you, and I'm a defender of Punchline. I know more so than most. I think the character has a lot of potential, but I will also admit that potential that I imagine for the character is not being flushed out here. I at least not yet. I mean, this is still early in Punchline adventures, but these are the formative years of Punchline, or the formative stories that are going to decide whether or not Punchline remains just sort of like a flash in the pan, or whether it becomes an endearing character. I think that there is a place for Punchline, given her, if she's the type of character that manipulates social media and is very good at it, and she comes across there as a little bit. I don't want her to become one-dimensional, and I fear that's where this is heading here. I agree with you about the arc. Mirko Andolfo's art is usually better than this. I mean, her covers are a different story, but I was really hoping to have a little bit more dynamic. The fight scene between Orca and Punchline was very, very disappointing. Punchline seems to be, I'm not sure if she has a plan here or what have you. That former member of the Royal Flush Gang, that Punchline humiliated in prison, has basically had this Orca to beat up Punchline. Meanwhile, her best friend, or Punchline's former best friend, Aiden, who she knew in high school and in college. Aiden is in fact a Punchline fan. He manipulates Bluebird and uses Punchline's paralytic aerialized gas to sort of incapacitate Bluebird, and to basically try to, take her out. And so clearly Punchline has a history here. Bluebird is trying to investigate to get more evidence to use against Punchline at the trial of Punchline, because Punchline, apparently, in terms from an evidentiary point of view, there is not any direct evidence that she murdered anybody during the Joker War. So of course she potentially has a defense there due to only circumstantial evidence. And so through Leslie Tompkins and Bluebird, they're trying to establish a case against Punchline. So that story is moving forward. But this story, I think you agree with me that this story should feel more exciting than it is. Because because when I describe it like I just did, I should be more involved in this story, but I'm not. I'm not sure if it's the art, but I'm not sure. I'm not really quite feeling the emotions of Aiden. I at some level, we should be feeling some degree of empathy or sympathy for Punchline at some level. But there's just to sort of draw us in and make us, even though we know Punchline is a villain, there should be a little bit more of a question mark there to pull the reader in. Just like in Harley Quinn in her early years, we knew she was a villain in the early years, but there was something about Harley. Now, I realize Harley's a different character. Punchline is darker than Harley, but still, there should be a little bit more there for us that we can hang our hat on than what we're getting here. So, but, I'm a little disappointed. And it's ironically the next chapter is called No One's Laughing Anymore. Well, I'm going to stop laughing pretty quick if we don't get some character development for Punchline. She should be more sophisticated than she is at this point.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, let's move on to Wonder Woman number 772. This is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad. The art, let me get to the credits page here. The art is by Travis Moore. Colors by Tamra Bonvillain. Letters by Pat Brousseau. And this is Afterworlds Part 3. Diana's still in Valhalla. And we find out in this issue that she's not where she's supposed to be. Like, we kind of already knew, but now it's been acknowledged. And we finally find out who's been talking to her and kind of guiding her whenever she dies in Valhalla before she's resurrected. And I got to admit, it's not somebody that I expected.
I never saw it coming either.
Yeah, at all. But I'm enjoying the story. I feel like the Travis Moore art is not quite as solid or as dynamic as it was in the beginning. But that's likely because he's been drawing this book for a few months now and doesn't have as much lead time. The black and white scenes are spectacular. It really shows his ability. But there's just a few panels here or there where I guess the anatomy doesn't look quite right. The dimensions don't look and proportions don't look quite right. But overall, I'm enjoying the story. Odin shows up here. Wonder Woman heads to confront the Valkyries, and I don't know if this it feels like we could be hitting the end of this first story arc next issue. Like maybe it's only a 4-parter. The other thing I noticed was that there was no backup in this issue. Previously we'd seen backup with the Jordi Belair story, so I was kind of wondering about that. But overall, I'm enjoying the story. It just, this particular issue didn't feel as dynamic as the first couple of issues. It felt like a little bit of setup, which, you get that from time to time. But it was great seeing Deadman show up. I did not expect him to be Diana's guide, as it were, in the afterlife, but it makes a heck of a lot of sense. So anyway, what did you think about the issue, Rock?
I actually, it was good. It was a little bit, I thought a little bit underwhelming, but it pushed the narrative forward. It reminded us that we got two mythologies at play. We have Norse mythology with Ragnarok, which is like Viking Norse mythology, and that comes into play. There's also Greek mythology and Olympus. So Wonder Woman here, she not only has to get to the bottom, she not only has to get the key that is located in this serpent Nidhogg, the serpent, and she gets into the stomach of the serpent by hiding in the egg that she had to retrieve from the eagle's nest last issue, that was swallowed by the Nidhogg serpent last issue. And so she gets the key, and now she has to make her way to the Valkyrie in order to sort of see, to free them, because the Valkyrie are not capable, for whatever reason, they're not carrying the dead in the Battle of Ragnarok. They're not carrying the dead into the afterlife where they can celebrate their victory and then essentially be reborn again to do battle every day. And then she runs into Siegfried, Siegfried was her initial companion that she met, and Siegfried is from Norse mythology as well. And he sacrifices his life in order to help her gain entrance ultimately to the on her path to the Valkyrie. And she even meets up with Odin, the father of Thor. And there's I got to say, like, overall, Michael W. Conrad, Becky Cloonan, co-writers here, I think they've weaved, this is not a complicated tale. Wonder Woman confronts her darker self that ends up being nothing but an astral projection of Dr. Psycho, because he's still involved here. And of course, she meets up with Deadman, which is a very interesting choice. I've read a lot of Wonder Woman over the decades, and I don't recall the last time, I can't recall a Deadman story where Deadman ever was a guest star in a Wonder Woman comic. I'm sure somebody could probably correct to remind me when that was, but it's interesting. I'm not really sure how Boston Brand Deadman is going to end up playing a role in this, but it's interesting. I'm curious to know how this is going to end up resolving itself, and it should also be noted that Wonder Woman is slowly getting her powers back. She could fly this issue. In the previous issues, she was constantly getting killed because she forgot that she wasn't invulnerable and she never had her full skill set. In this issue, the weapons are cursed, and so they've discovered not to use the weapons because the weapons are cursed. So she uses different weapons in this issue, or a sword that's different, and so there's a lot of details in the story that I think Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan do very well at. Travis Moore in the art, fantastic. Visually, this is a really good story. This is a better Wonder Woman story than I've read. I got to be honest, probably in the last few years, in terms of how it comes together. And I would suggest that if one doesn't like this story, it's because you're maybe not a fan of the mythologies. But overall, I thought this still remains a creative intermingling of Norse and Greek mythologies and Wonder Woman's role in it.
Yeah, and the marriage of those mythologies is actually working a lot better than I would think. On paper, I don't know that I would think that they would work together that well. But it's curious, and it's a perfect type of story to tell with Wonder Woman. I mean, there's no reason why Wonder Woman has to be steeped in only Greek mythology. When you think about it, she suits a lot of the tropes or the ideas of Norse mythology as well. Certainly, the Valkyrie and Valhalla and whatnot. So, all right. Well, on to the first of two anthology books we're going to talk about: Batman Urban Legends, issue number 3, which we've been big fans of, both of the Chip Zardasky story, the Red Hood story, as well as the Grifter story from Matthew Rosenberg. So we get part 3 of both of those stories. The Red Hood and Batman story by Zardasky has Eddie Barrows on pencils, Eber Ferrer on inks, with Jesus Moreno. We also have Marcus Toe on the flashbacks, and then Adriana Lucas handles the colors with Becca Carey on letters. Over in the Grifter story, Matthew Rosenberg is the writer, Ryan Benjamin handling the art, Antonio Fabella on colors, Seda Timofanti on letters, and Adriana Lucas and Antonio Fabella, two of the best colorists working in comics right now. So no surprise that they're on these stories, and the art looks so great. We also have the third part of the Outsiders story from Brandon Thomas. Max Dunbar's the artist on that one. Luis Guerrera handles the colors, and Steve Wan's on letters. And then the last story, which in a way might be the most interesting, Lady Shiva in Death Wish by writer Che Grayson, which I have never heard of that person before. Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque is the artist, and I know his work. He's the one that did the Letter 44 series with Charles Soule, which was from Oni, I believe, which is a really, really great story. David Barron handles the colors on that one. Adita Bidikar does the letters. We'll just go story by story. I thought the Red Hood story is as poignant and emotional and pitch perfect in terms of characterization as the story has been throughout. The first part of the story was super impactful and really, really good. The second was a bit of a downturn in terms of it felt like a little bit of setup and moving characters around on the page to get them where they need to be to set up moving forward. And that confrontation with Batman and Red Hood at the end of that leads into this, where Bruce is doing his best to try to understand where Jason is coming from. And Jason is doing everything he can to try to prevent this this young boy who calls himself Blue Hood, which I thought was a nice touch, but just to prevent him from going down the same path that Bruce and Jason himself went down. Right? He doesn't want this young boy Tyler to have those same experiences. And again, I'll call it the artwork by the whole artistic team, Eddie Barrows and Eber Ferreira. I mean, great work. There's a particular close-up of Red Hood's face where you can see how strongly he feels about this boy and how he doesn't want him to experience the same sort of childhood trauma that he did. So everything is great here, from the flashback scenes where Jason Todd is still Robin and him taking certain things upon himself to try to handle on his own, to Jason losing patience with Batman and Batman saying, hey, it's daytime. We don't go out in the daytime. That's when we do our detective work. We'll go out later after we've done our homework, so to speak. And Jason ever being the sort of reckless and impulsive character. And that's what's reflected in that flashback. You know, here he was Robin and he was reckless and impulsive. He's grown and all this time has gone past. He's been killed and come back to life. And he still hasn't learned the lesson to not be impulsive and reckless. He still hasn't learned the lesson to believe in Bruce. You know, he's asking Bruce to believe in him, and they are working together on this case. But he has not yet learned to sort of trust Bruce. He's asking for more trust than he's willing to give. And in the end, when he thinks he has a lead and he bursts through the door of this rundown apartment, he's actually attacked by Mr. Freeze, and we find out that maybe Freeze has something to do with this Cheer Drops drug. And he's not in a good place. He's outnumbered. He's overpowered. And maybe if he'd listened to Batman, they could have gotten there together. He wouldn't be under threat because he chose to undertake this alone. So it's very clear to me that Chip Zardasky understands who Batman is. He understands who Jason Todd is, which kind of leads me back to his Justice League Last Ride. Tell your Batman story here and be sure we're getting something other than a Batman story there. But yeah, this has been a great story. I think the art is solid. The color work is great. I'm very, very ready for the rest of the story. I think this one is, I want to say 6 parts, according to, part 3 of 6. So we're halfway after this one. So what were your thoughts on this first story, Rocky?
I echo your comments. It's very well done. I love the kid, Batman calling the kid Blue Hood and giving him a lollipop, and it was Batman showing a softer side. And you know, you get a sense that Batman even tried to show a softer side to a young Jason Todd back in the day in the flashback sequences. And it's funny when they drop Tyler off to Leslie Tompkins, which is an appropriate place to drop the young boy off, because Leslie Tompkins was there for a young Bruce Wayne when he was traumatized, and ultimately even a Jason Todd at times. The one phrase in here that Batman says to Leslie Tompkins was, the goal is not to create another Robin, but to help a Robin. And, you know, and that's very important, is that, you know, it's interesting when you look at the difference between a young Tyler, the young boy in this issue, versus a young Jason Todd. One gets a sense that this Tyler doesn't have the anger that a young Jason Todd did. And, you know, the father-son dynamic, that father dynamic is really rampant throughout this storyline, and just how much it underscores everything. And you hit the nail on the head about, you know, Jason Todd having anger issues. You know, Jason Todd can point fingers all he wants, but the fact of the matter is that Jason Todd has never truly held himself accountable he's never really been in touch with his own feelings, and he's never really got a handle on his own anger. And we see that in almost every story. Every great story involving Jason Todd has him dealing with his anger in some way. We even saw it in 3 Jokers, where he we know what he did to the Joker in 3 Jokers. So the guy's got anger issues, and he always seems to try to turn it around to make it somehow somebody else's fault as opposed to his own. And he's not particularly great at coming to terms with his own feelings. But, you know, kudos to Chip Zardasky for really utilizing the young boy Tyler as sort of a an emotional centerpiece in the telling of this story. And we're even getting to know Batman a little bit here. This is definitely a softer side of Batman, because one could argue, it's interesting that Batman, he really cuts Jason Todd some slack here. I mean, Jason Todd murdered somebody. I mean, I can point to we can all point to a slew of Batman stories where Batman does not let anybody get away with murder. It doesn't matter who you are. But somehow Jason Todd, he repeatedly gets a free ride and, frankly, away with murder. And Batman lets him get away with it. So clearly Batman himself has a soft side for Jason Todd. But in any event,
well, didn't Tyler's dad have a gun pulled on Jason Todd, though?
Well, no, fair enough. But that's not what Jason told Batman. Like, and I don't, you know what I mean? It's not as if, I guess you could argue that maybe Batman just knows that. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that Jason, I mean, is that really an excuse? I mean, Batman finds a way. And, again, it just seems to me that the conversation has never had, well, like Batman should have arrived on the scene and at least saw that, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could argue that.
I'm not disagreeing with you that he's never taken accountability for his actions, and he certainly blames other people for it, and you could make the argument maybe for self-defense in this particular case. You certainly couldn't make that argument with the Joker in Three Jokers. He was tied up. That is just straight up murder. There's no other way to look at it. And I'm just sort of being pedantic here to think about that. And yeah, you would expect more from a superhero. And I don't know. It's interesting because Scott Lobdell had such a long run, pretty much from the time the New 52 started, nearly a 10-year run on Jason Todd. And you would think going that long with a character, we'd have more of an idea of who Jason Todd is. But yet he still feels like a character who's lost. And in fairness to Lobdell, maybe that's the point. Maybe that's who Jason Todd is always supposed to be. He's always supposed to be a flawed character who can never find himself. So
yeah.
Anyway, what did you think about the Lady Shiva story?
I have I could talk for an hour on this. I got so much to say, but I'm going to try to keep it short. I think that Lady Shiva's been written wrong for at least the last 5 years to begin with. So I've got a very specific interpretation of Lady Shiva. I like the portrayal of Lady Shiva having a death wish in the Destruction's Daughter storyline with the original Cassandra Cain Batgirl series back in 2006, 2007. That's the favorite Lady Shiva. I didn't recognize the Lady Shiva in this series, although fans of The Outsiders might cut it some slack. This new writer, Shea Grayson, I don't know who it is, but Lady Shiva is just, in my view here, she's written like someone who's just depressed because she has a poor relationship with Cassandra Cain. Lady Shiva's origins, at least at one time, were shrouded in mystery. Back in the days of Richard Dragon, she was avenging the death of her sister. This really oversimplifies Lady Shiva. It makes her, in my view, very one-dimensional. It makes it sound as if she only became a martial artist or essentially to avenge her sister, and then spent decades avenging her sister, and then had a daughter, Cassandra Cain, had a bad relationship with her daughter, and now doesn't have a relationship with her daughter, and now in a fit of depression approaches Batman now that he's living in Gotham and he's not a billionaire anymore, and basically antagonizes Batman and manipulates Batman to kill her so she dies, and because she's so depressed. And I straight up find this entire issue insulting to Lady Shiva in the extreme. This is one of the worst interpretations of Lady Shiva that I've seen in a while. Lady Shiva would never. Lady Shiva, does she have a death wish? At one point of time she did, but the goal, her death wish was to be defeated by somebody who's better than her, and she wanted that somebody to be her daughter, to be better. That's what made Destruction's Daughter such an epic storyline. Lady Shiva and Cassandra and David Cain, they had an offspring who they raised in the language of motion. That was Cassandra Cain. And Cassandra Cain could not speak. She only spoke the language of motion. And finally, when she came of age, Lady Shiva returned, the mother, with the goal of finally finding an opponent that could defeat her own daughter, to carry on the legacy. That's what was epic about it. All of that has been stripped away here to make Lady Shiva this pathetic, emotionally weak woman. Now, that might be all good for, that might be your typical woman, your typical mother, but this is Lady Shiva. This is Lady Shiva. She's not, look at, even Tom Taylor did it right in the Deceased series, where Lady Shiva, she went out defending her daughter. I mean, Lady Shiva is kick-ass. She's hard-ass. She's got principles. She lives by a very strict moral code, and you never exactly know where Lady Shiva stands. But here, everything about this was one-dimensional. I didn't like it, but unfortunately, Lady Shiva was not well characterized by Brian Hill in The Outsiders. I was not a fan of his portrayal of her in The Outsiders, and this is just sort of continuing that narrative. This is a character that had so much potential, and it's been squandered. She's now just a pathetic, one-dimensional, disgruntled martial artist that is humiliated by Ra's al Ghul. She doesn't stand on her own. She's not much of a leader. There's nothing mysterious about her. She's a sad, emotional shell of what she used to be. She deserves better than this. Straight up. I'm done ranting. I'm sorry. I'm done ranting. Yeah. But
I agree. The story's got any number of problems with it. First of all, if Lady Shiva is showing up and she wants Batman to kill her, that's not necessarily a good choice because we know Batman doesn't kill. Also, if this is what she planned, why does she have to take a steak knife from his knife block in the kitchen? It's like it comes across as impulsive and weak emotionally, and yeah, you're right. I mean, you're 100% right when you say Lady Shiva deserves better than this. She's a good and interesting character. This does not portray her in that light at all. She comes across as an extremely weak character with questionable motivations, and that's not Lady Shiva. If there's anything about Lady Shiva that stands out that you remember as sort of this classic Batman character that would show up from time to time, is that she has the strength of her convictions. And yes, you might not know where she stands, but she always knows where she stands because she does have a moral code that she adheres to, even to her own detriment at times, if necessary. None of that exists here. Yeah. She feels wishy-washy. She feels emotionally weak.
Well, not only that, but even Bruce Wayne. Let me just vent one more thing. Since when is Bruce Wayne going to emotionally bond with Lady Shiva? She's eating pork in front of Bruce Wayne, and he's opening up to her about, they're talking about Cassandra as if they're talking about their kid or something. This is nonsense. Batman wouldn't have this conversation with Lady Shiva. Give me a break. There's nothing about this that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Bruce would disarm her of the knife and throw the knife away. He wouldn't be holding it in his hand where she could then throw herself on top of it and stab herself. Yeah. It's weak, it's lazy, it's bad storytelling, and it's just I mean, you're trying to add some depth to Lady Shiva about how much she cares about Cassandra. There's other and better ways to do it. Frankly, it's been done better before. The fact that she's willing to sacrifice herself and like Rocky was talking about with her death wish, which would actually elevate her daughter, that shows how much she cares about her daughter. This just shows that she's weak. Actually, what it shows is that the writer doesn't understand who Lady Shiva is. It actually is what's going on here. Yeah. All right. Up next, we have the finale of the Caretaker, which is the Outsider story. I don't have much to say about this. It tells us what we knew all along, which is Katana and Black Lightning are just friends. Yes. Katana does have feelings for Black Lightning that run deep, but they're feelings of love you would have for a comrade or a colleague or a friend, not any sort of romantic feelings. So again, it's sort of, this story sort of feels like, what was the point of it? I think the art is good. I think the color work is good. Apparently we may be getting some more Outsiders later in the year because at the end of the story, it does say continued in the fall of 2020 when at the end of the story, Metamorpho, Katana, and Black Lightning in costume are all sitting around eating a meal at a Japanese restaurant in costume, which is just ridiculous. And they talk about who they're going to invite to join the Outsiders. We know Duke Thomas, based on the Future State stuff, is going to be a member, and Black Lightning mentions him, and then he mentions we're going to make it work. Our fifth member is somebody different, but who it is, when Metamorpho asks, Black Lightning just gets a big smirk on his face. So
do we know?
I don't know.
I can't remember Future State. Was the fifth member revealed in Future State? Why am I drawing a blank?
No, I don't think that it was. Not that I remember. But my initial thought, like the first person I thought of was Red Hood not Red Hood, Arsenal, Roy Harper.
Right.
I don't know why that popped into my head, but that's what I thought. Anyway, do you have anything to add about?
Well, just that story? I'm gonna call it, and I might be wrong, but I can't believe they would waste 2 issues on whether or not Katana loves or does not love Black Lightning, unless she does, and she does, and I think she does, and I think the giveaway was that the sweat on her cheek. She was doing her best to internally resist the truth serum, and I think she successfully resisted the truth. I think that Katana successfully resisted the truth serum and lied to her mother-in-law when she said that she just loves Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning, as a friend. I think she's in love with him, because it still doesn't explain why Masio, her husband, whose soul was in the Soul Taker sword, why he disappeared. I think she does love Jefferson Pierce, and I think that's going to be one of the things that's revealed. I think it's a great plot line, and I can't believe they would just tease that for more than 1 issue, because that was even teased in Future State. I think some attraction there. I can't believe that they're just friends. I don't believe it. I might be wrong, but I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me that likes that idea of Katana and Black Lightning getting together romantically, but so much of who Katana is and her identity is wrapped up into her demotion to her dead husband and her family. So I don't know if that weakens her motivations or whatnot. So there's a fine line to be tread there. So all right, what about the Grifter story by Matthew Rosenberg? What are your thoughts here?
Again, I continue to absolutely love this. And remember when we reviewed the last issue, I said Chance Adibi, she's hot, and I called it. I said, it felt like James Bond that Grifter has to sleep with her, and he slept with her. It's awesome. I mean, he's having a little fun, and they're doing the nasty, the Long Con Part 3. Well, I tell you what, this is the dialogue here. Matthew Rosenberg continues to craft snappy dialogue, great dialogue. He adds more intrigue because it's teased at the beginning that I believe that the organization that 6 months ago, in the flashback from 6 months ago, it looks as if I'm guessing it's Leviathan that attempts to recruit the Grifter, and attempts to recruit him by telling him to essentially infiltrate, Lucius Fox. And so it might be that Grifter is playing more than one side against the other, that he's working for Leviathan, he's working for Lucius Fox, and now he's he's sleeping with whoever he wants to. And he's wanted by Mr. Freeze for the he's wrongfully accused of killing Nora Freeze, Mr. Freeze's girlfriend or beloved. And also he's wanted for the death of Toyman, who we believe was killed by, well, we're not sure who killed. We're assuming Leviathan killed Toyman. So something is up here. And in the meantime, he's like a nonchalant James Bond. We even got a reference to his wild cat days, because there's a mention of John Lynch, who was that's a reference way back in the day. And so, I gotta say, man, I'm loving this. He's lying to his boss about sleeping with Chance. I mean, there's witty dialogue here. There's he even meets up with Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is investigating. Bruce Wayne knows that something is up. Bruce Wayne is he's concerned that Lucius Fox has hired Cole Cash, the Grifter, to protect him. And Lucius Fox basically says, I run Wayne Enterprises now. I know what I'm doing. And so he sort of brushes Wayne aside. But Batman himself shows up at the end to actually help Cole Cash, to help the Grifter against being attacked by Black Mask's men, because Grifter now he's caused a lot of BS, and there's a lot of people out for blood, and they want to take Grifter out. And so there's a lot going on behind the scenes here. And, Matthew Rosenberg does such a great job about, because we joke about how Grifter is the guy, he's always in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he always seems to attract trouble, even when he's, in theory, supposed to be protecting. He's just supposed to be a bodyguard to Lucius Fox. How does this guy always attract this amount of trouble? There's comedy to it, but it's also serious, but he's got the humor and the dialogue to go along with it. And man, this is an adrenaline rush. This is fun reading. I've loved this from the first chapter all the way to the end of the third. And Batman here now Batman's even intrigued, and he's got Batman wanting to protect him now too. So there's a lot going on here, and I've never been more interested in Leviathan than I am now. Leviathan, what does Leviathan have that, Toyman was a de facto member of Checkmate. Toyman was murdered last issue. Leviathan appears to have maybe potentially tried to recruit Grifter at some point. And now with Nora Freeze being killed, something's going on here. There's so many loose threads. And the one thing I feel confident on about Matthew Rosenberg, having read his work at Marvel, I'm confident that Matthew Rosenberg's going to pull all this together. And I'm definitely in this for the long haul, all 6 chapters.
Yeah, this is stunningly good. The artwork by Ryan Benjamin is fantastic. Matthew Rosenberg, probably my favorite Grifter writer. Not that I've read every single Grifter story, but he gets that irreverence so pitch perfect with Grifter. But he never, that self-deprecation is always omnipresent as well, which it needs to be. But as the reader of the story, and you get the sense that Cash is so much smarter than what he puts out there, what he's projecting, right? He always wants to seem like he's just kind of a meathead, just a dumb guy who kind of lucks into situations or whatnot. But everything is calculated with him, from the face he puts on, the mask that he shows to other people, to the way he's talking to whoever it is on the other side of the radio. So yeah, this is fantastic. It's such a great story. And the fact that Bruce is worried about Lucius hiring Cole and Lucius pushing back on that, saying, well, you're not in charge anymore. Like all of it. It's great. It adds to both the mystery of the story, because we still don't know quite what's all going on. All the pieces haven't been put together yet. And so all of that, all those little details are so additive to what's going on. So yeah, I'm definitely ready for an ongoing Grifter from Matthew Rosenberg. I would definitely be on board with that. So all right, on to the last anthology. Like I mentioned, there's a second anthology. There's so many stories in this. So it's DC's Festival of Heroes. It's celebrating Asian culture, I guess. It says DC's Festival of Heroes, the Asian superhero celebration, featuring the first appearance of Monkey Prince, who's in the last story, which is by far the longest story in the whole issue. I was like, wait, this is still going? This is still going, which isn't always the best sign of a good story if you're wondering why it's still going. But anyway, we'll get there. The first story is speaking of Cassandra Cain, like we just did with when we were talking about the Lady Shiva story, this is a story where Cassandra Cain certainly is characterized well and accurately, and it kind of illustrates some of those points Rocky was making earlier about her language being movement and whatnot. And it's called Sounds. The story is by Mariko Tamaki. Art is by Marcus Toe. Colors by Sebastian Chang. Letters by Janice Chiang. And I should also mention, in addition to all the stories in this anthology being about Asian characters, the majority of the creators in here are Asian themselves. So I think that's a great way to celebrate. But I absolutely love this first story. It's narrated by Cassandra herself, and she's talking about the trouble that she has speaking, because she grew up not speaking. She grew up learning the language of motion, like Rocky mentioned earlier. So I thought this was great. The interaction she has with Oracle trying to reach out and establish more of a kind of a vocal relationship with Cassandra, and Cassandra sort of falling back into her old habits, but knowing that she needs to break out of them. I thought the art was done very well, also by Marcus Toe. So I think this was probably my favorite story in the book. I thought it was done really, really well. So what were your thoughts on this first story, Rock?
I love this. I love this. Full credit to Marika Tamaki here on this. She nails it. In fact, this is something that I wish Brian Hill would have done a better job with when with Cassandra Cain when he was writing the Outsiders. But in any event, yeah, this is it's so significant here. And what the way Marika Tamaki sort of brings it out is in a potential love interest for Cassandra Cain. One of the things that was done really well in the original Batgirl series is that Batgirl herself had a crush on a number of, on at least one individual, and she struggled with her language. And she often, and not only that, not only did she struggle with language, but she couldn't read. It was one of the weaknesses that she had. There's something with her brain. It was almost like she was on the spectrum for autism, where she could speak the language of motion, but she couldn't read. She was, in fact, illiterate. Now, she's not illiterate in the story, but she has difficulty with sounds, and it makes it difficult for her to communicate when she's trying to express an attraction in this story to a scientist that she rescued, a Dr. Chin, who she rescues. He's a very good-looking scientist with a good sense of humor, and she ends up rescuing him from these thugs, and ultimately ends up running into him later on down the line, and she's immediately attracted to him, but she's not good at expressing herself. She has a difficult time uttering any kind of sound, but she manages to do it at the end when she essentially goes out and she retrieves a straw for him outside a coffee shop, and she says you're welcome to him at the end. It's a nice little story. It fully encapsulates and gets the essence of Cassandra Cain in a way that is so crucial to understanding the character. The reason why Cassandra Cain is different than just another member of the Bat family, she's more than just a one-dimensional another martial artist in the Bat family. She's somebody that when you were raised only with the language of motion, where you're not used to expressing yourself through language, through sounds. Think about that for a second. That is both a fundamental weakness in communicating with people, but it gives her a huge edge that she can understand what somebody is saying because of their body language, not from what they are saying. Think of the story potential of that has for stories moving forward, that other than her first series, no writer has really effectively went with that as far as it needs to go. I like what Marika Tamaki has done here. Writers have to understand that about Cassandra Cain. That makes her a fundamentally different and more interesting character, in my view, than any member of the Bat family. And to disclose my bias, she's my favorite DC character, Cassandra Cain. So yeah,
wow, did not know that. She's a favorite of mine too. Not my favorite character, but definitely my favorite Batgirl, and yeah, she's up there for me. All right, up next is a really short story by Min Lee. Art is by Trung Lee Win. Letters by Adita Bidikar. It's called Dress Code, and it stars I think it's pronounced Toy Pham, who is the character from Min Lee's Green Lantern Legacy graphic novel from the DC Young Reader line, and it's basically sort of about Asian heritage more so than maybe any of the other stories here. It's very forward. The art, I think, suits the story. It's got sort of the color work's got this feel that makes it sort of feel Asian. Just this where everything's sort of yellowish, which really helps. But basically, this boy who's a Green Lantern is fighting against a Yellow Lantern, and the Yellow Lantern is taunting him, saying "nice dress," and he's wearing, I think it's called I'm probably mispronouncing it. Apologies if I am, but an Ido, which is basically a traditional Vietnamese garb that is worn by both men and women. Which is, I'm sure you've seen them. It's like a long tunic, which is kind of split on the sides. They're usually worn with trousers. And it can look like a dress, but clearly it's not. And it's just a poignant story as the young boy remembers a conversation that he had with his grandmother about why she chose to continue to wear her traditional Vietnamese garb, even though she was in the United States. And this boy's grandmother says, "Why fit in when you can stand out? You know, people give me funny looks, but that's great. Like, why fit in when you can stand out?" And that memory of that conversation with his grandmother gives him the confidence to win the fight against our Kilo, I think is the character's name, the Yellow Lantern. So it was a nice, fun little story. I enjoyed it.
My only complaint about it is one where I never read that young adult. I have no idea what this Green Lantern is called. You said his name is Toy Pham.
I think it's Tai Pham. Yeah, I haven't read it either.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
Taipham. The only reason I know is because I looked it up, because I had remembered that there was a young Asian boy that was a Green Lantern, but I didn't remember where he was from or whatnot. So right. I did look it up, and it is so. I've bought most of those young adult books for my daughter, but right. That's one we just haven't gotten a chance to read yet. So.
That's my criticism is that if you want to give exposure to this character, there should be at least a panel that his name is identified. Now,
yep, I agree.
There's nowhere, anywhere. Who is this kid? What's his real name? What's the grandma's name? I mean, just a little bit of like say, I think this is a great story. The whole idea of, he defeats Arkillo and kind of humiliates him, and he makes a passing comment to Arkillo about, "You look pretty good in green. If you ever change sides, let me know and I'll help you with your uniform design." I mean, he's a smartass. He's got a sense of humor. He looks good. It does have an Asian feel. I think it does credit to the character and what the character stands for. But put the name in the character. I can't believe they wouldn't have the name in the story somewhere, because guys like me, it's the young adult line is a different line than it's a different kind of sensibility than the mainstream comics. I mean, at least, if I don't know who the character's name is, I mean, because quite frankly, I read advertisements all the time. It's pretty sad if I have to Google it and it's not even in the story. But I mean, that's, again, it's a minor nitpick. Good story, good art. I think it works well. I just, come on, man. Editorial should have caught that, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, we have a story that has a couple of Asian characters. These are much more well-established. It's called Hawk and Kong. Stories by Greg Pak, art by Sumit Kumar, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Steve Wands. So we have Kenan Kong, that's the Kong part of the Hawk and Kong, who's the new Superman of China. And then obviously Connor Hawk, long-standing character who's both Asian and black and white. Oliver Queen is his father, and his mother was Asian and black. So he's got quite the diverse heritage. I think this might be my least favorite of the stories. I think the art is really spectacular, but I didn't really feel like this was the characterization of Connor Hawk that I remember of him. And I understand why Greg Pak's, kind of had Connor come across the way that he did, because it makes sense for the story, but doesn't necessarily make sense for the character. Connor Hawk was always somebody who was very empathetic, and so basically the gist of the story is Connor's on his way to have dinner with his mother and his grandmother, and he's supposed to bring the kimchi. And on his way there, he stumbles across some LexCorp giant robots that are causing havoc. But the new Superman is there to sort of save the day, because apparently Superman's out of town and asked Kenan Kong to keep an eye on Metropolis for a bit. So Kenan takes it upon himself to defeat these giant robots without worrying that much about civilians or collateral damage. which leaves Connor with a bad taste in his mouth as he has to sort of be sure that none of the damage that Kenan Kong is causing is going to harm any civilians. And he breaks his jar of kimchi during this fight and then shows up empty-handed to have dinner with his mother and grandmother. But Kenan Kong, having seen that happen, actually flies to China and brings this back something called poi kai, which I'm not familiar with. And he
Yeah.
says it's not kimchi. It's even better than kimchi, apparently. And Connor Hawk's like, okay, thanks, bye, and takes the jar from him. And of course, his mother and grandmother are like, well, why don't you invite him in? And that to me is what Connor Hawk would do. He wouldn't need to be prodded by his mother and his grandmother to do this. But again, it makes sense for the story. And maybe Connor was really that annoyed by Kenan Kong. So I thought it was okay. It would have been better, I think, had Connor invited him in on his own. That would have been a little more true to the character. But I don't know. That's just kind of a minor nitpick. So I thought it was fine. It was an okay story. Any thoughts on this one, Rocky?
You know what? I really love the era of Kyle Rayner and Connor Hawk when there was even a series there of Green Lantern and Green Arrow. I love that era of DC Comics. I got the whole new Superman run. These are two great characters. I think it's a great. I love seeing them together. I don't think I've ever seen these two in the same story together. And I think this is actually a pretty good combination, and I look forward to them, having more adventures together. I actually forgot what nationality Connor Hawk was, and even in the narrative it says he's a black Asian, and then he says, but for these circumstances, I'm Korean, so I'm not exactly sure what the exact. I guess maybe he is Korean or he's a black Asian. I'm not sure what Connor Hawk is. I know that his mother is Shadow, right? And his father is Oliver Queen. Or I think, but maybe I'll stand to be corrected on that. But I'm pretty sure his mother is Shadow and his father's Oliver Queen. And Oliver Queen was never around during his upbringing. And so he's... it's good to see him back. We need to see more of these characters. And we need to see more of these characters, in my mind, not just on when we're celebrating Asian heroes. These are great characters in their own right that deserve more recognition other than just specialty comics like this. But, I like it. Greg Pak has, he made a name for himself. Well, Greg Pak he's a well-seasoned writer. He's written Superman, Action Comics before. He's made a name for himself with New Agents of Atlas. Greg Pak has written for the Asian superhero community, heroes over at Marvel. He created a speculator boom with New Agents of Atlas, and here he is writing this story, and he's good at it. And I like this. This is just a fun story. It's a good story. This isn't, that's what I love about this entire collection. I never felt that any of this was really pandering. I thought these was good stories celebrating these characters in their own right that just happen to be Asian. So yeah, and the art by Sumit Kumar was really good. Romula Fajuti Jr. is my favorite colorist. He does a great job here too. Pretty good all around.
Yeah, just one thing. Shadow is I think you're thinking of Amiko. That's who Shadow is the
mother of.
The mother of Connor Hawk's mother's named Sandra, and yeah, I guess she's half black, half Korean. So when he says he's black and Asian,
right,
Blasian, that's what he said. Yeah, so right. He is a quarter Korean, a quarter black, and then half white from.
That's right. Yeah, that's his mother at the table, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yes, Sandra Hawk. So
gotcha.
All right, next story. I really don't have much to say about. It's a Damian Wayne story, so it probably doesn't surprise anybody. It's written by Aniz Adam Ansari, art by Sami Basri, colors by Sonny Go, letters by Gabriella Downey. And basically Damian discovers that the League of Shadows are running a pizza restaurant, and they were going to kill people by poisoning pizza. And then the poison didn't show up in time, so they just straight up murdered them in the old-fashioned way. And if that makes 0 sense to you, then you're right on board with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a Damian Wayne story. Definitely my least favorite of the stories in the book. So I don't have much else to add other than that.
I agree. It doesn't. I mean, writer and Aniz Adam Ansari. Sam Bazrian, the artist. I mean, it's just a boring story. The art's okay, but this is a pointless. This shouldn't even be in here. I guess Damien's Asian because his mother is Talia Ghul. I guess.
Yep.
I suppose so. That makes him qualify. It's funny. I don't really think of Damien as Asian, but yeah, I guess he is. But this was a waste of pages. Total waste of pages. Ridiculous. I mean, I would have enjoyed it more had this could have been a Super Sons issue. It would have been funnier if John Kent was at least was around here. But I guess John Kent is a little bit too white for the for the story. Maybe I don't know. But this should have been a Super Sons story. I don't understand. This was definitely. I consider this. This is. I wouldn't even put this in a young adult. I don't know. This was not my cup of tea. We'll leave it at that. And move on.
Yep. Next up is Masks by Ram V with art by Audrey Mock, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Tom Napolitano. Basically tells the story of Shu, who's a character, one of the orphans of the Catwoman Alleytown area of Gotham from the Catwoman story. And she's kind of taken it upon herself to take the next step from being just kind of a helper for Catwoman, one of her, I don't know, for lack of a better word, street urchin helpers, to actually putting on a mask and creating an identity for herself of the Cheshire Cat and going in and trying to take a more hands-on approach. And there's it's a great scene. It once again proves the abilities of Ram V as a storyteller when we get Shu and Selena Kyle kind of sitting on the ledge of a rooftop with Selena giving her advice on how she should be kind of handling herself going forward to prevent what almost happened. She almost got taken out by this group of criminals that she was trying to take out, and Selena had to come in and sort of save the day. So we expect to see more of Cheshire Cat. We get a little editor's note at the end saying, follow Cheshire Cat's adventures in Catwoman. So expect to see her take a bigger role in the Catwoman book going forward. So yeah, I thought this one was pretty solid.
Yeah. I was actually, what I found interesting from it was the fact that, I mean, Cheshire, the villain Cheshire's, I believe, is her mother. I mean, that was the villain that dropped her off at the church way back in the day. And I think that's what those earlier scenes were, which I don't even know. Does Cheshire Cat, does Shu know that her mother is actually the deadly assassin known as Cheshire? I don't know, because she just has images. She remembers seeing that mask that I believe her mother wore, and that was Cheshire. And Cheshire used to be with Arsenal, and they had a daughter together, Leon, who was killed, and then at some point Cheshire had another offspring, and this is Shu, and I'm pretty sure that's Cheshire that drops young Shu off at the church, and the only memory that she has of her mother is this Cheshire mask. And so I'm wondering if at some point she's going to end up having, she's going to end up meeting her mother, Cheshire. Does she know that? Does Selena know that? I'm not, I think it's interesting moving forward. And so I'm curious that maybe Selena has not sort of brought that up to her. Does Selena even know that there's a connection between her and Cheshire? Does Cheshire know? I think it's a future story potential there, just waiting to be told.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to like here, and again, the fact that we're going to get more of her and in the hands of Ram V, I think that's perfect. All right. Well, up next we have kind of one of the longer stories with what I would consider probably the most traditional art that we see in terms of looking the most like DC house style superhero art. It's called Family Dinner. The story's by Alyssa Wong. The pencils are by Sean Chen. Inks by Norm Ratman. Colors by Rain Barreto. And letters by Ariana Marr. And it's basically the story of the Pierce family. So we have Jefferson Pierce, otherwise known as Black Lightning. We have Jennifer Pierce, known as Lightning. Their older sister, Anissa Pierce, Thunder, and Anissa's girlfriend, Grace Choi, who I wasn't familiar with and don't know where she has shown up before, but Sean Chen does a great job of making her look both beautiful and formidable, and everything that goes on in the story is sort of predictable, but it doesn't make the story any less enjoyable. And this is in terms of both the art, like I said, and also the story, what goes down. It's kind of the most super heroic tropey story. Of course, they're out to dinner. Of course, there's disagreements with Jefferson's instincts to be overprotective of his daughter and make sure that she's safe. And then they're attacked by Mammoth and Shimmer, who are brother and sister and longtime Titan opponents, actually. So it all makes sense. And then, of course, everything in the end, they sort of make peace and plan on having another dinner the next week, which likely will be ambushed by some other supervillains, because that's just what happens in comics. But it was enjoyable. Like I said, if not predictable. I'm not familiar with this Grace Choi character, but I really liked what I saw here. So I don't know if you're more familiar and can educate me at all on who she is, Rocky, but interesting character.
Sure, yeah. Well, I don't know if I can really educate you more. There's not much to say about her. I collected, I mean, back in the day, The Outsiders, that's from like pre-New 52. Grace was a well-established character in The Outsiders, an active member of The Outsiders, and she did have a relationship with Thunder in the past. And so this is just sort of carrying forward, but with sort of like new incarnations of the characters. What I really
makes sense then, because that's kind of when I was taking my break from comics.
Yeah.
That couple of year hiatus right before the New 52. So that makes sense why I hadn't heard of her.
For sure. Yeah. And she was she's more attractive here. I will say this. I mean, she's less, forgive me for putting it this way, but she's less butchy a character here. She's a little bit more trim. She, artistically, the art here by Sean Chen and the inks by Norm Rapund, they do a really good job. Colors by Rain Burrito. The art here is fantastic, and these are attractive looking characters. So this really does a wonderful, good service to these characters, and their relationship is portrayed in a very healthy, good relationship kind of way. It's not dysfunctional. They love, and Grace and Thunder both support each other. Even the younger sister, Jennifer Pierce, who is Lightning, and it's. I mean, I continue to laugh that Black Lightning has children called Thunder and Lightning. I mean, it's kind of cliche and tropey, but it kind of works. And yeah, like I said, it's fairly predictable, but it gets you accustomed to the characters, so that I can definitely see that if you are looking for inclusion, and this doesn't feel forced, it's not pandering. These are good characters, and Grace wants to, she stands up for herself. She's not a pushover. She wants to make a good impression on, her girlfriend's father. It's, again, very, very predictable, but at the same time, this does move these characters forward in terms of it establishes who they are. It establishes their power set, and you get to know them as people and as characters, and in terms of their relationships. And overall, it works. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
And
next we have. Oh, go ahead.
We did skip one, or maybe you're going to it. The story, we skipped a story.
Oh, we did.
What's in the box?
Sorry. Yeah, so that one's so short. It's easy to skip. Well, it's by Dustin Nguyen. He handles the story and art. Letters are by Steve Wands. It's a sort of another Cassandra Cain story. She's sitting on a bridge, and she's got some dumplings in a box. And there's a character, and I don't know who this character is.
I don't either.
Comes up and sits next to her and asks what's in the box, and I don't know the point of this story without context of knowing who that character is. What I'll say is it looks beautiful. It's painted by Dustin Nguyen, watercolored, and it looks great.
Yeah.
You'd be able to tell me who that character was.
No, I was hoping you'd know. I thought maybe at first it was Monolith, a Jimmy Palmiotti created character, but Monolith doesn't change into a kid, so I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who this kid is at all. I don't even know. I mean, we're even reading. I mean, you and I. It's not like we're not reading current DC comics. This isn't even a
Yep.
kid who's a member of Titans Academy that I'm aware of. So I don't know who this kid is, but I'm sure maybe some people who are listening can tell us, or if they're watching this on YouTube, they can let us know in the chat or let us know in the comments. But yeah, I don't know who this redheaded kid is, but yeah, they're
Yeah, maybe somebody from the Lil Gotham series that Dustin Wynn did. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's another example of, maybe mentioning the name of these characters would be a good idea in these short stories when you're
Yeah.
trying to introduce. I mean,
Yeah.
just for an editorial note for future editors doing these types of stories. If you want to introduce these new characters, I mean, how hard is it to throw in a word balloon with a name here and there?
Yep, I agree.
But
Uh, all right. Well, we do have. We mentioned her before, Amiko, son of our daughter rather of Oliver Queen and Shadow. She's in a story called Kawaii Calamity by Sarah Kuhn. Art is by Victoria Ying. Letters are by Ariana Mayer. I'm not a big fan of this art style. She basically has a dream. She's fighting some giant Asian animated character, I guess. And then
yeah,
maybe it turns out it's not so much of a dream because when she wakes up, there's a little stuffed animal of it there
yeah.
next to her. And she picks up the stuffed animal, snuggles it, and lays back down to go back to sleep. So, I mean, it's a fun story. It's not my preferred art style. But I think if you do enjoy this art style, you'll probably think this is a fun story. I like Amiko as a character. I think she's got a lot of potential. I rather would have seen her taking out some criminals or something like that. Although I don't know that this art style lends itself to that. So it was fine. It's another
Yeah.
one that's it's not offensive or by any means or terrible, but it just it's okay.
Well, it's funny because it sort of like the point of the story is this. Amiko is really offended at this in her dream because she says you think I'm Japanese, that because I'm Japanese I like anything that's cute, and then it ends
Yeah.
with her liking the very thing that's cute, liking the teddy bear that was alive and anthropomorphic in her dream, and it's kind of cute, it's funny, and I think it serves its purpose. Sarah Kuhn did a good job with it. The art, I think, really suits the narrative, suits the story. It's well done. It's again, we got an eclectic different types of stories in this celebration of Asian heroes, and it's a nice addition to this book, this anthology.
Yeah, the next one's called Festival of Heroes, written by Amy Chu, line art by Marcio Takara, color art by Rain Barreto, and letters by Gabriella Downey. This is the one that is sort of hits the nail on the head in terms of like what's going on in the world right now with the rise in Asian hate crimes and prejudice and whatnot. And we've got Katana, Cyborg, and the Robbie Reyes version of Blue Beetle that are hanging out at this 43rd annual Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Festival, which I think it's supposed to be in New York City. And the reason they are there is because the organizer of the festival is basically has received recent threats from this group calling themselves the Knights of the Brotherhood, and spewing all kinds of hateful rhetoric and garbage. Go back to your own country, blah blah blah. When some of these people they say, hey, my family's been here since the 1880s, probably longer than the families of those that are spewing this hate. And so they've asked Cyborg, Katana, and Blue Beetle to come keep an eye on the festival. And what's really cool is there's some cosplay going on, and we see somebody dressed up as Grunge, Gold Lantern, OMAC, the Ryan Choi version of Adam. So it's pretty fun. And then of course these hateful jackasses do show up, and they appropriately get their butts handed to them. Which is really interesting. So the whole reason they even have powers is they've come across this Chaos Stone, which apparently is an artifact that has moved throughout time from civilization to civilization, feeding on fear and hate to make the wearer more powerful. And once Katana destroys this stone, the people that are attending the festival kind of take matters in their own hands. Oh, you guys don't have powers? You're not so tough now, right? And they kind of kick their butts, and it's great to see them all getting their butts handed to them. So unfortunately, it reflects a little too much of reality right now. I hate that this is going on in the world, and it's ridiculous. I've said it 1,000 times. We are all so much more alike than we are different, especially if you want to get scientific and talk about it, on a genetic level. It's like 99.9999999% that we're all the same,
Yeah.
and picking on somebody because of the way they look or the way they sound or the way they dress is just asinine. So I did enjoy the story, but again, the bad part of it is that it's even necessary, or that we're even reminded this is going on in the real world right now. And of course, Batman, Superman, and the Yara Flor version of Wonder Woman do show up right at the end when our heroes are sort of getting their rewards for defending the festival by being able to sample 23 different ethnic cuisines at the festival. Of course, the Trinity show up at the perfect time. Are those dumplings? Can we get in on some of that food? So, yeah, it's pretty funny. Cyborg's like, hey, you all weren't even here for the big fight. So good point, Cyborg. Good on you. So, any thoughts about this story, Rocky?
I was surprised to see somebody dress up in the story as Gold Lantern, because Gold Lantern doesn't exist until the 31st century. So I think it's a minor editorial error, but I don't think anybody would know what that is Gold Lantern, because if they, because that would be news to me. But hey, if I didn't know better, I thought Bendis wrote the story, but that's a bad joke. But no, Amy Chu wrote this story, and I thought she did a good job. I will say that at one point, Katana says something that had absolutely nothing to do with the narrative, that was out of place. And I'm going to just say it out loud. She says to the Brotherhood, she says, your sophomoric attempts to hypersexualize me and my Asian sisters are pathetic at best. I would only point out that at no point in the entire story did the Brotherhood say anything about any woman or any Asian girl in the entire story. So that was completely out of the blue. I mean, I don't know.
The one guy does say, "Hey, Geisha girl, want to give us a dance?"
Well,
so I mean,
I don't know. It's like,
I guess you throw the word "lap" in front of dance there, and it would kind of be appropriate. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think Amy Chu's trying to address that part of what's been going on in society lately. But obviously, I mean, it's a PG comic, so you can't.
Yeah.
You don't want this Brotherhood to be over the top creepy.
And I look, I get it. And I probably have too much of a sense of humor about this sort of thing. But, Katana, I think, she's this gorgeous superheroine. She's wearing these super tight clothing. She's a walking hypersexual creature, like all female superheroes are. So it's like, well, it's like, the Brotherhood are jerks because they're fascists. I get it. But I couldn't help but chuckle when she said that. She's sort of like, taunting them on. And of course they, because they're bigots and they're hateful. And like you said, this hits very close to home in terms of what we're experiencing in society. And so it's nice to see that they get their comeuppance in this story, and that it has a happy ending. And
and the other thing is, Katana, she's got a katana and she wears a tight black leather, skin tight black leather outfit. It's very dominatrix when you think about it. So yeah, you're right. She might just be speaking from past experience of how people see her. So it's interesting.
All right. One more?
Two more, I think. First up is a Ryan Choi story,
right,
from Pornsick Pichachot, with art by Alexander Temafengi, Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, and Adita Bidikar on letters. Pichachot and Tefengi they're the ones that just last week had the Good Asian released on Wednesday, which was a great start to a period crime noir story about one of the first Asian detectives in the United States from Hawaii. So I do recommend that if anybody hasn't been reading or picking it up. So basically, they're telling the story of Ryan Choi, who is helping out somebody who's an Asian gentleman who's in the hospital. Somehow there's some sort of extraterrestrial future infection from the future, perfecta it's called. They shot a bomb through time that's released a quantum-scopic bacteria to booby trap a person's DNA, all to make their descendants die perfecta's greatest enemy. So it's an interesting story, a little hard to follow. I think the art does work well. So does the colors, removed for Harda Jr. So no surprise there. But where the story really matters is in the last few panels where Bruce Wayne shows up and Ryan Choi's talking to him about, you're a billionaire, you can do more. Everybody can pitch in and do more. Just like everybody in this neighborhood is banded together when people heard that the neighborhood was sick. So they showed up for each other. They put together collections. Everybody was pitching in. And Bruce is like, well, I'm a billionaire. You're a genius. Tell me how we help, where we start. It's a good reminder that we don't all have to be billionaires, because these people were there helping each other even before Bruce Wayne showed up with his money. Just looking out for your neighbor is, something we can all do, regardless of how big our bank account is. So I thought it was an okay story, and it's another one that doesn't really stand out, but it does have a good message at the end.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was actually, I want to give Pornsack, really
Peach Show.
Yeah, Pishashot. I want to give him some credit. I actually think that the plot line was actually pretty good. I would love to see a full plot line on that. The whole idea of shooting a virus backward in time to basically compromise a person's ancestry, so that they're, shooting a virus back in time to infect some of their, their great grandmother, so that eventually in the present it will compromise their descendants, is actually a pretty inspired way to defeat your enemy. And so I thought that was quite that this Difecta virus, or whatever they're doing, this far-flung artificial intelligence, is actually I think that's a future potential story that has that I would have half expected to have seen in a future stage story. But I like it, and it's always good to see Ryan Choi. I liked him since I remember Gail Simone wrote his first series there. I thought it was quite good. It's nice to see he's looking better. I remember when he got killed by Deathstroke, so he's looking much better than the last time I recall reading about him, because I haven't really read a lot of Ryan Choi. So no, it's good, and I like the name Perceptible is a good name for the narrative, because it's perceptible, because it's always those things that we choose not to see that are right in front of us that can sometimes harm others, and that's sort of a good sort of a metaphor for racism and prejudice and those things that can harm us, and it's about acknowledging those things, and acknowledgement is the first step to do something about it. So again, it really fits the anthology well.
Yeah, and then last up we have The Monkey Prince Hates Superheroes by writer Jean Luen Yang. Art is by Bernard Chang. Colors are by Sebastian Cheng, Janice Chang on letters. And yeah, this Monkey Prince, Monkey Boy / character, whoever, I don't know, this story just kind of felt like it went on way too long. Like, I just felt like, is it over yet? Is it over yet? And Jean Luen Yang, normally I'm a huge fan of him. So I don't know, maybe it had to do with the length of the story. Like, it wasn't quite long enough to make it a full, feature where you could pace it and plot it out like you would want. But he got more real estate than anybody else. So, he did have to fill those pages. So I don't know. I mean, it's Bernard Chang art, so the art's really good. And it does end with a blurb: the adventures of the Monkey Prince continue later this year. But I got to say, even though it's Jean Luen Yang, based on this story, I wouldn't be picking up a Monkey Prince title. It just, character didn't really come across as very likable either. So again, this one was just only okay for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Rocky?
It's one of those things where I hesitate to say what I'm thinking, but I'll say it anyway. And I say this with great respect, but how is this not a horrible portrayal of the Japanese? I mean, if this was if the Monkey Prince was actually a black person, can you imagine if he was actually a black person and they called him Monkey Prince? I mean, the backlash that you'd get. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, and now we have a Japanese character, Monkey Prince. I think this is insulting. And I really do now, but of course it's not I'm not one of these guys. Look, I'm not gonna like virtue signal here, okay? I'm not offended, and nobody should be offended. It's just a character that changes into a monkey prince, whatever, okay? I'm just saying that I'm actually shocked in our woke culture that they actually approved this horrendous idea for a character. This is a stupid character to me. There's nothing. He has a Jingu Bang as a weapon. When fear gets the best of him, he turns back into human form, and he turns back into a Japanese person. So what is that saying about? I don't know. This is cliche. There's also another character here that I think is that rubs me the wrong way, called the Schiffer Piggy. His mentor is actually looks like a pig, and it's called a Schiffer Piggy, and then he exercises demons. This is, I don't know. So one Japanese character turns into a pig, and the other one turns into a monkey. I don't know how this is. I can't believe that this is something that would be approved by editorial. I'm stunned. I'm totally stunned. Now again, I guess we got Gorilla Grodd, but I mean, a gorilla. I don't know. This whole thing, and then why does he hate superheroes? That it's a stupid title. Just because of I mean, there's a one minor incident. There's no real reason for him to hate superheroes, but it just seems he's friends with Billy Batson. That's why Shazam was in here. And he ends up saving Savannah, who thought he had captured Shazam, had actually captured the Monkey Prince, who was disguised as Shazam, apparently. Honestly,
apparently he can shapeshift or something.
I don't even know what his skill set is, but I found him annoying, really annoying. I'm not sure why we're supposed to like this guy. I was actually reluctant to like the character because I'm waiting for somebody to complain that it's racist. I don't think I'm not virtue posturing, but we live in such politically sensitive times. I can't believe they would create this character that looks ridiculous, sounds ridiculous, has ridiculous motivations, and I just think I'm just so surprised that DC would create this character. This is such a ridiculous character. I mean, and then his mentor is a pig, Schiffer Piggy, and Monkey Prince. Are you kidding me, DC? I'm sorry.
Well, it's right there. It's right there on the front cover, featuring the first appearance of the Monkey Prince. So I think you said Japanese. I think this is actually Chinese.
Oh, I apologize.
Chinese culture, and obviously Jean Luan Yang knows much about that. And I do know that in the Chinese culture, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that they do have gods based on animals, and the Monkey Prince even says here that Shifu Pigsy keeps trying to get me to call some Chinese monkey god. I don't even remember my dad. So I don't know if it has to do with, these gods, and maybe that's part of why it links in with Shazam, because Shazam getting his powers from, Greek mythology. Maybe this is, characters getting their power from Chinese mythology, where the gods are based on animals like monkeys and oxen and pigs.
Like you're the pig and you're the dog and all that jazz.
Yeah. But I totally get your point. Regardless of that, and whether some people find it offensive or not, the character's just not likable. So why would I want to? I mean, at the end, the last line of the book, superheroes suck. Like, why do I want to read about this angry Chinese guy? Like, no, I don't. Yeah, it's not exactly portraying them in the best light. So I sort of agree. But I defer to people of that ethnicity. They're gonna know much more about it than I do. I don't know much about Asian culture. I'll be honest. I did find it interesting. I'm first of all, I love that they're celebrating Asian heritage and all these Asian characters. I love the fact that the vast majority of the creators in the book are Asian creators rather. I do find it a bit surprising that Jim Lee just did the cover. Like, I would have expected, you want to talk about an Asian creator who's really kind of a role model for people of those ethnicities. Like, you would have thought he would have had a bigger role other than just doing the cover. Same thing with Artgerm, although I don't know that I've ever seen Stanley Luau ever do anything other than covers. I don't even know if he could do interior work, but his cover is awesome. That's the cover I plan on picking up with Cassandra Cain on it. So that's done really well. And even the editor on this book, Jessica Chen, she's obviously of Asian descent as well, and did an incredible job putting all this talent together and putting these stories together. I can't imagine. I mean, it's a 100-page giant. That is a huge book to wrangle all the creators and all the deadlines and all the, different aspects of what you have to do to put a book like that together. So I did want to mention her name as well, because she deserves all the credit in the world. So yeah, that does it. We're coming up on 2 hours here because we had so many books to talk about. Overall, pretty solid week from DC. I think the highlights being this festival of Asian superheroes, along with Joker, I thought was done really, really well. Intriguing start to the Justice League Last Ride, and of course Batman Urban Legends. The Zardasky story and the Matthew Rosenberg story continue to be highlights for sure. So overall, pretty solid week. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty solid week too. Again, it's probably, if I had to pick one that I enjoyed the most, it was probably both Rorschach and the Joker. I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anything you got coming up this week that you want to tease?
Well, I've said the same thing for the last 2 weeks. I'm still working on my I got like a top 50, but I've expanded it. So I just gotta get my top 50 sentimental, my top 50 for value, top 50 for I might have a top 150 at this point, but yeah, I'll keep plugging away at that.
Great.
What about yourself?
Yeah, over on the podcast, the Kickstarter spotlight coming up this Wednesday, tomorrow, is the art book for Dead Eyes by Jerry Dugan. The art book, obviously, by the artistic partner on the Dead Eyes series, which is the legendary John McCrae. Always great to talk to John. He's been on the podcast before. He is such a fun guy to talk to. He has such a different perspective on things. And so he joins me, and we have a nice chat about not only the art book for Dead Eyes, but he's doing the Swamp Thing, the Rom V Swamp Thing series that's coming out right now, currently from DC, that we've been talking about. Mike Perkins, the artist, needed a break for the month of June. So John stepped in and got to draw a Swamp Thing story where Constantine shows up, 2 of his favorite characters, and we talk about that as well. So that's coming up. And then I had mentioned last week about having Matt Kint on our Bad Idea Takeover for Sunday to talk about Walesville. Well, Matt's schedule did not allow him to come on last week, but he will be on this coming Sunday to talk about Walesville and NEX. So we got that coming up as well. So I think that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. As always, we really appreciate the support. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure you click that subscribe button for the Comic Boom channel, so you can be made aware whenever Rocky has new content coming up. Hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified whenever he gets new episodes up. And we always appreciate comments in the section, as well as likes, which help out views and all that. So if you're listening to the podcast version, and you always listen to the podcast version, go over to YouTube and subscribe anyway. It doesn't cost you anything but maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Rocky, really appreciate it. And if you are checking us out on YouTube, looking at our beautiful faces, and you're curious about the other content that we put out, you can find the Comic Source on any podcast platform. So we, as I said, we always appreciate the support. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We know you love getting these in-depth DC reviews on the same day that they are released to everybody. And don't forget that on Wednesdays we do a spoiler-free look at other books that are coming out for the week that you may want to be on the lookout for. So that's going to do it, guys. We will talk to you next time.
See you later.
Mm-hmm.